And good evening, everyone. Welcome to Spline Design Studios Saturday for another episode of our scratch build track for the NASCAR Racing 2003 season simulation. Just getting things set up here. Finally got the uptime going there. I keep missing that every once in a while. Started the stream there, so the first two episodes, I guess, for this series, as far as this ongoing series, I guess, for the scratch build track build for the simulation, the two episodes prior to that are up on the YouTube as the archive. Dropping a few frames here, just want to make sure it settles down just a tad before get too far into it. Oh, there's another little burp. Okay, hopefully it'll settle down a little bit. I'm just going to bring this over. Alright, so, oops, I was going to bring that up here. So, where we left off, that's the camera view, where we left off last week, and it's still in the same condition. Adjust this here a little bit. Mind me just a tad, folks. I need to adjust some things. Alright, there we go. That should do a little better. Okay, so yeah, where we left off last week was getting the F section applied, just kind of following that outermost X section, or the one X section there, as far as to apply, potentially apply the first and foremost texture, but we didn't finish, going into the interior here, as far as into the so that's what we're going to do next, as far as to get that applied. Get that all buttoned up, and then we do have a texture. It's kind of a makeshift one, kind of a placeholder even for texture to apply, so we can get rid of this white and actually apply a track texture. So what I'm going to do first is continue to apply. Yeah, that's what I was trying to remember where I left off here. So I got this going here. I'm just trying to see what's this segment here. So I got to apply. That should be to this here. So we got to apply F sections all through here, so that we can close this in. So with this section, this segment here opened up there, we just need to insert F section. Like so, and then just move on from there. And the reason you get this white, I guess it shows up here because you have this one here. So until you get two F sections within your track segment actually applied, you won't get this white. So this is how you kind of know where, I think this can actually attach to this. Yeah, it should be able to. Let me zoom in on that. Yeah, so as I have always mentioned with the controls, I guess, for moving around in Sandbox, is primarily your mouse pointer, the Z, X, and the C key. That's your primary keys as far as, it's both the only main keys. So yeah, I should be able to attach this to there. I gotta play with it a little bit sometimes, but should eventually go. And just like I've always mentioned before, sometimes it helps just to kind of move in, zoom in on it. There we go. Well, maybe not. I guess did it attach? I guess it did attach. Now, what I have to be careful of, though, is not to bring this in too far. I want to leave a little bit of cushion. Yeah, that is attached there. I don't want to get this, I mean, I can detach it, I guess, from the next section, but I'm going to leave it just off that that X section there just for now. I don't quite want to snap that to it yet. Eventually, I probably will end up having to do that, but for now, not just yet. I'm going to just... yes, there just want to adjust this a little bit. Pardon any mic noise there. Just, yeah, I'm trying to get that adjusted a little bit better. There we go. I'm still arranging some things, I guess, with the studio of sorts as far as to get bouncing back, I guess, between Wednesday evenings and Friday evenings, and then doing the streaming stuff, and then it's still working out the kinks, I guess, as far as the layout for the streaming stuff. So, alright, so yeah, we should be able to attach that. So yeah, we're just going to go all throughout this interior and apply our opposite F section here, and just attach this all the way through. And just as always, you'll find yourself zooming in and out just to maintain, I guess, some direction as far as to make sure that you're just to get a sense of where you're at. So like zooming in and out. Electrical Lumber coming in with a raid. That's quite interesting. Welcome everybody from that stream. I don't know if that's actually legit. How are we doing? How are we doing? Collard by the helm, how are we doing? Welcome to the stream. How are we doing today? Everybody coming from that raid. Appreciate everybody coming over. Kind of scared the bejesus out of me a little bit. I appreciate it though. So what's everybody been up to today? What is this? This happens to be to go into a little bit of explanation here. This is a spline design, hence Spline Design Studios Saturday. Excuse me. Of a racetrack. In this case, it happens to be part outer oval as far as kind of a road course. They call it a roval, but this is to be designed, I guess, for use in a racing simulation. And this one in particular, designing this one for the utility that I'm using is for racing simulation by the name of NASCAR Racing 2003 season. And yes, I did say that correctly, 2003. And realizing we are in 2018, that simulation, that racing simulation, is still pretty widely used. There's been a new, influx, as far as like motivation, I guess, to create new content, modern content, I guess, for that simulation to kind of, bring it to a new level. The fact that the original developers have kind of walked away from it, and it's kind of left some of those like myself to create their own modding groups, I guess, to create new content for the simulation so it can still be used and keep it updated. So yeah, this is just, this is kind of one aspect that I tend to engage myself in as far as creating things for different simulations. This one happened to be probably one of the older simulations that I engage in. I've also done some things for Farm Sim 17, the Giants franchise there, I guess, as far as the Farm Sim stuff, as well as tried to dabble a little bit with Wreckfest, as far as with Bugbear. But that's I haven't done any streams on that yet, and I'm kind of looking forward to, I guess, to doing those types of things. But for now, I kind of stick with what I know. For sure, I've got a lot of information, I guess, to share in it. And that's kind of why I guess I do these streams, I guess, to kind of get people at least an understanding of how much time goes into doing these types of things. How do I think the world will end? That's a loaded question. I'm hoping not anytime soon. That's for sure. I definitely don't think. I would hope that doesn't happen, but probably more or less, I would consider, if I had to really answer the question as low as it may be, probably more of a natural type of thing. I'm thinking more in terms of like asteroid, some type of Armageddon of that sort, if I had to think about it. I would hope it wouldn't come down to something that was of man-made. That's for sure. Well, there's always that option as well. Always that option. We've seen plenty of different types of movies and TV shows or whatever that depict, I guess, that very thing happening. Not out of the realm of possibilities. That's for sure. But realistically, I guess that's something I just love the idea of that kind of world. Yeah, I mean, it's everybody to each their own. I mean, it's I try not to think about those types of things, to be perfectly honest, but you can't necessarily escape the fact that those types of things can happen. I mean, that's I tend to focus, mostly on doing these types of things to keep mind off of that until it actually does happen. 7 Days to Die is one of my favorite games. Yes. Yep, I've watched plenty of streams, to be perfectly honest, on that. I haven't played it myself. I'll be honest, but I have watched. I've watched some plenty of co-op, I guess, on that game, and it's very interesting. It's survival, and if that's anything that most of us should really have anyway, regardless of what the impending doom on the world happens to be, is to know how to survive. Finding food and things of that nature. Got to be able to know how to do that. People can build some pretty amazing stuff on there. Yeah. So is that one of those things that is moddable and stuff like that? You can create things like that, or is it more like just creating? I'm just trying to understand, I guess, as far as I know, you can create. I want to say forts, but that's probably not the right word. You can create a habitat or a domicile, and those things, based on things that you gather. Yeah. I've also played, and I have played the game, the simulation. I think it's still pretty popular, but it's called Rust. And we got another raid coming in. I'm getting raided left and right here. Hindred coming in with Party 5. Welcome in, Hindred, and all those coming from Hindred Stream. Welcome, welcome, welcome all. Glad to have you. Yes. So, if you haven't necessarily checked out, for those that are still in the stream here, as far as that's the second raid I've had today. That's amazing. But if you haven't checked out Hindred, you should be following him. Number one. So I'm gonna go ahead and shout Hindred out there. Last thing what was he playing last? Oh, it's an API error. Nuts. Yeah. From what I remember, Hindred, you were doing some modeling. Yeah, actual 3D models. That was pretty cool. So if anybody it's in the stream, hasn't checked out Hindred, you need to go give him a follow as well. He's got some pretty cool stuff he does. He does some creative things as well. It's kind of what's interests me too. It's giving me some ideas actually for how to set my streaming studio up. To be perfectly honest, that's kind of my own little. I'll throw that out there. I won't hide that. The fact that I've been snooping on him, I guess, a little bit. If that's okay there, Hindred. Okay. So, what I'm in the process of doing right now, I know I have explained quite a bit there, but basically laying out what will eventually be a texture path for this course layout. And you see a lot of this white will eventually go away as we add additional texture segments into the track, and keeping in mind too that this track is still relatively flat. This is all flat. This is at a zero plane, so definitely keep that in mind. As far as this is just in the early stages of development, until it actually gets inserted, I guess, into the racing simulation itself. So, yeah, don't take too much, I guess, to as far as it's in its very early stages, its infancy, if you will. We are long ways, I guess, from getting it actually usable, I guess, within the racing simulation itself. Lots of prep work, I guess you could say, to get it to that point. So the way this utility works there, and that's part of the reason why I do the streams like that, as far as not only to give a little bit of knowledge and how to do this with this not so user-friendly application that was originally designed by the original developers of the NASCAR Racing Shows and 3 simulation, calling Sandbox. Trying to just show, if anything, what is involved with creating a track, from the ground up, and as well as to, if you decide to actually want to divulge into doing this yourself, or at least, just knowledge as to how much effort it takes, I guess, to actually build a track from the ground up. So that's primarily why I do this, and it's also kind of like a stress relief for myself, because it's kind of relaxing in a way. It enhances, I guess, your calm as far as like being patient. Definitely have to be patient with doing these types of things, because if you're not, you're gonna get frustrated very quickly. And yeah. So as far as if you could say, I guess, as far as finding my zen, it's probably one reason, I guess, I like to divulge in these types of things, because it does necessarily do that for me. So, and the satisfaction you get for being able to get a finished product into the simulation, actually be able to use it with all the work and time spent, going through these processes, it's pretty satisfying. So it's another reason why I tend to do that. But and I know I've mentioned plenty of times, and I'll keep saying it, as primitive as this application, be it the Sandbox utility to design these types of things, how primitive it is, it's pretty complex when you think about it, as far as what you're able to do with it. It's got so many different layers to it. So this is just the geometry view. This is just the one aspect. The other views that you have are also to apply your actual track assets, be it track library, your grandstands, things of that nature. You can do your track surface decals, which is basically an overlay, I guess, of the geometry, as far as to apply like logos in the grass and things of that nature. So we'll get to that all eventually. This is only the third episode in this series, as far as to get this particular track built. This one being primarily and particularly, I guess, the Charlotte Motor Speedway, which is in Concord, North Carolina, is what they consider the location to be, and it is it's a track in actual existence, and that's why you can see in the background image, as far as underneath all this that I'm applying here, is a satellite image of the actual track. And I can turn off this, and you can see all the spline, as far as all these, the purple line, which is the center line of the track, as well as all this. This is the spline of the track as far as the outer reaches of it. This is actually what will be raced on in this region. So this is the actual sat image of the track that's actually in existence, and that's what I'm using as a guide to lay this spline out. So yeah, turning that back on here. So I'm going to finish up applying. Yeah, so this looks really hideous for now, and that's not going to last that way for too much longer. That's why we're moving right along, as far as like I said, this is very much in its infancy. This isn't even hardly close yet to even being inserted into the game, into the simulation itself. So please excuse the crudity, as far as how rudimentary it does happen to be at this point. Alright, so all I'm doing here is just tying these, and I'm leaving a little bit of room, padding if you will, as far as to not snap this texture segment, this green line, whatever that's defined as, to this height segment here, which is these red lines. I'm leaving a little bit of room yet until I get a texture applied, and then eventually what'll probably end up happening is I'll end up snapping that eventually, but just for now, so that I can get to the F section, easily in this view, I'm just keeping a little bit of space into that is all. It just makes it a little bit easier as far as being able to apply the texture once I get all these inserted. Alright, so far it's been pretty, and sometimes too, and I've mentioned this several times before, it requires you, I guess, to zoom in just a little bit just to get those snapped together. Just have to move them along the tail and the head, as far as your previous and your one you're trying to apply, I guess, in there. It can be somewhat aggravating at times, to get those to snap, but like I said, it does take a lot of patience. It's being very kind to me so far. Trying not to jinx it or anything like that. So what we have here, okay, so we got this F section here. This is going in this direction. You can see the arrows. This shows it the direction of, as far as what direction the track goes. And what we're trying to do is close this up on the interior of this course to bring it to the outside oval part. Alright, so see, did that snap? Not quite. So you saw it breathe there a little bit, and that's something that does necessarily happen. I've mentioned that before, as far as in the other 2 episodes, how it likes to breathe. See how that shifts like that? That's that's how the gaming engine, whatever, tends to translate the best it can, or whatever, as far as how that that needs to be presented graphically. So, and that's something that we've always had to deal with that. And not going into too much more detail, but the advent of being able to use LiDAR data to actually be able to model certain aspects like walls and such like that, to include height data as far as banking, elevation changes to the track. That's not, and it's pretty close by, let's put it that way, as far as figuring out how to be able to apply that. Been playing around quite a bit with my partners in crime as far as the modding group, Spline Design Studios, with that idea of being able to apply LiDAR data. And I might show that a little bit here in this stream as far as what I'm actually talking about. It's quite interesting to be able to use, if you think of LiDAR, to kind of explain that a little bit for those that don't know. It involves basically what is called cloud point data. Cloud point is basically taking topography information, be it via satellite and or something overhead, basically scanning the topography of a particular area, to include even the objects around, as far as like organic type of things around a region, and be able to put that into usable data, as far as like 3D data. Like I said, I'll find it necessary. I'll make time, I guess, to kind of show that a little bit as far as what I speak of, and I can elaborate on that a little bit further. But the information that you get is depending on the area, the region to which you're actually trying to apply that kind of data to something that we're doing here. It's pretty immense as far as the amount of data that does exist there, and it's like being able to tone it down or dummy it down, if you will, as far as to make it something that is actually usable. Because to use all the information that you get from LiDAR and use that and be able to put that directly into a racing simulation, any racing simulation at this point, it would be impossible. You would have to have a supercomputer to even load such an amount of data. And like I said, I will more than likely try to implement that into the streamer. So we got the most of the interior here, so we're just about done. I'll close this up here. Okay, so I've got this one going here. I'm just trying to see where I'm at here. Yeah, so we got this one going here. So if I put this one here, I should close that up there, which is what I want. Yep, so I'll just bring that out here. It's very confusing up until you get these types of things actually applied. As far as what you actually get, it'll make more sense once I apply a texture for sure. So I keep wanting to use the mouse wheel, I guess, to zoom in and out. It's this application that I'm using isn't as robust, I guess, as some of the newer programs that you have for newer games. As far as SDK. I guess I'm dropping a few frames. Just checking that out there. Hopefully that's not. Hope that's not interfering too badly, I guess, with the broadcast quality. Alright, so I'm just going to insert. This should be the last F section, which is for our textures. F sections are for X sections. These red lines are for height and elevation. F sections are for applying texture. As far as racing surface, the surfaces, be it asphalt, concrete. And then we have W sections, which are for walls, which actually have a collidable property to it. The option to apply a collidable property to it. So, yeah. We will get to the W sections and all that. Hopefully not too far from this point. Alright, so let's close this up here. There we go. So we got that little bit of padding on that X section there, so that is completely closed in now. So now what it comes down to is, now that we have both the inner, at least the initial inner and outermost F sections applied, and we can clearly see how this thing, is laid out here. Keeping in mind, we will eventually end up having to put additional F sections in here to define, different areas. Have dotted, painted lines and things of that nature. That'll come eventually. Oops. See, I still find myself. I have to, I get so used to using particular keys in other programs, as far as to be able to maneuver, I guess, in different applications. This one's very rudimentary as far as when it comes to that. The primary keys that you use in this application are the X, Z, and the C key, which is all down in the lower left of the keyboard. So it's a little bit simple, but alright, so let's bring up the camera view here, and you can kind of get an idea. You can see just a cloud of white in here. And eventually when we get our textures applied on here, we'll be able to see that in this view. So as you can see, it's very flat. It's all perfectly flat, to be honest. There's no elevation or anything to it as of yet. That will change as we go along. You can't stop me. Yeah, I'm assuming it did that because of the tags or whatever that Twitch has in there. I think I'm assuming that's why. I thought maybe at first they're kind of it broke there, the shadow broke there again, but I had to I had to redeem myself, I guess, as far as last time. Thanks for the 2 biddies there, Hendred. Appreciate it. Much appreciated. USA number 2, nice. Okay, so what I'm going to do here next. See, and I can jockey around in this. Yeah, this is just slew mode, I guess, in this camera mode. So that's just to look at it from a different perspective is all. What I'm going to need to do now is apply texture to this, and I had some rather place setters, I guess you could say. I guess as far as yeah, they won't be final textures. I'll probably end up changing it eventually, but it's something that I felt would probably work. For now, I guess it's just to apply texture to our track. So I'm going to go into our little properties window for this F section, which is for our textures. And I'll probably explain this window here a little bit. So in this window, this is our F section properties, which is applying the texture to this section. Right now, it's obviously doesn't have anything applied to it as far as texture. Now, what you have the option to do, your base texture is basically what you see visually, be it asphalt, concrete, dirt, sand, things of that nature. You also have a light map view, which basically controls your manually applied shadows. Be it the fact that this simulation that I'm working with doesn't have its own shaders, applied, as far as the gaming engine, the graphics engine, it doesn't have its own. So you have to manually apply shadows yourself. That's something, to be honest, that's something that we're still, as far as Spline Designs group, trying to figure out a way, I guess, to be able to apply what is considered AO baking, which is an ambient occlusion, taking like a track model and being able to render the shadows, based on daylighting, and apply that in that fashion. Haven't 100% perfected that process, to be perfectly honest, but eventually do hope, I guess, that we can figure something out for that, because as it sits right now, we kind of just do makeshift shadowing much the same way we've always dealt with shadowing for the simulation. You kind of create just a gradient texture and just apply it in that fashion, and then you can adjust. You have the ability to be able to adjust the intensity of it within this F section property, depending on, especially if you're in the light map layer as opposed to the base texture. So what I'm going to do here, I have some textures that are loosely applied, and see all these are listed as blue because none of them are applied to our track spline as of yet. So we have our choices here, just scrolling through. There's a bunch of textures that I have in here that are not being used as of yet. So I'm going to look for one that's called asphalt, and you can see it initially applied to it. Now, without applying a UV texture size, textile size to it, it gets applied. It fills basically this is like a poly. So if you consider, as far as this being a polygon, as far as of a 3D model, what Sandbox initially tries to do is just fill that area the best it feels appropriate without applying a UV to it. And basically what UVs are basically a left, a linear, as far as, the different directions as far as how the texture is spread out across that polygon, any particular polygon. In this case, it would be this polygon. So without applying that, so maybe a little bit of explanation, a little bit more explanation would be, I'm going to go ahead and open this up. Let me navigate that really quick. Go to where I'm working on this here. This is our Charlotte Roval. So here's all the textures that we have, and these are in the form of a MIP file. MIPs are basically the actual acronym for it. It's a multi-image processing file. So basically what it is it has the parent size, which would be like your at close distance, and then you have from further distance. So depending on how close you are to the textures, it determines how much detail there is in that texture. So that's what these files are all set up for. This is the format that is used by the simulation to which we're building this track for. Now, I have an application to be able to open, so I'm considering using this one as I got it. This utility here allows you to open these multi-image processing files into, let's see if I can navigate. I'm not in there yet. So let me navigate to that. Got lots of projects going on here, but we're going to stick with this one primarily for now. So we're going to open up this texture. So this is what the texture looks like, one-to-one. So these orientations, so this has 10 sub-images. So what that means is this initial size here is more than likely probably a 2048 by 2048. Possibly doesn't tell me in here. I could export this out from here. In fact, I'll do that right away as a bitmap, and I'll go ahead and save that right to our track. Let's put it in the same location as our track build, and I can open that. And if I wanted to edit it, change the contrast, make it darker, things of that nature, I could do that. So I'm going to go ahead and open that up into my favorite program, painting program of choice, which is PaintShop Pro. So here's the texture in its raw format, bitmap format. So this happens to be a 1024 by 1024 texture. Okay, so what these parameters mean in here, let me close this and I'll reopen the MIP. Reopen this MIP just to kind of explain a little bit as far as how these work. So this has 10 sub-images, which means what this program will do when it converts it into a multi-image processing file, it'll take this 1024 and reduce it down in powers of 2, one step down in up to 10 times. So this will probably take this 1024 and reduce it 10 times, by a power of 2. That's what you'll have. That's what will be included in this MIP file. It doesn't show them all, but that's what this pull down says it will apply. So basically what that boils down to is, like I said, as far as if at a further distance from the texture where it's applied in given locations of the track, it'll show a lesser quality, say for example. And still noticing I'm dropping some frames there, so hopefully that's not impeding on the stream quality too badly. Hopefully not too much. And if I'm not explaining this stuff very well, please let me know, and I will be sure, to explain it as simple as possible. But further explanation, of this is a type 10. This one's a type 10, and I'd have to refer to my cheat sheet here. There's different types that you can apply as far as being compressed or uncompressed. In this case, this texture with the 10 sub-images happens to be compressed. So it has a level, and even with the compression like that, it's not. This is actually what you'll see in the game if you were to apply it one-to-one, and I'm going to show that in Sandbox here in a second. The mapping on this is it's a map of 0, which means this is kind of important too. A map of 3 basically states that it just will stretch the orientation of this texture across the poly evenly. Okay. As a 0, it'll do it, and again I would have to refer to mine. That's either vertical or horizontal. So that means you'll have, in this mode, as far as this mapping, you'd be able to skew it as far as left and right. So let's go back to Sandbox, and I'll show you that you can see how this is oriented here. It should be oriented in much the same fashion in here. And you're gonna need, in order to have this as a one-to-one, and I'll show this here. Right now, there's no UV on it, so you can see how this is laid out here. You can see this dark line right here, how this is and how that's oriented. You can see it's going from left to right, much in the same fashion that the F section itself for that texture is applied, left to right. So this is the left side of the texture, and it's just repeating that to fill that in there. And that's doing that in this direction. So the way this texture is set up with that map of 0, you'd have the ability to be able to shift this, and I can show that here a little bit. Let's try this. So if I was to set this in fact, I'm going to go like this and put this to a 1-to-1. Okay, so that's a 1, and we'll set this one at a 1. Okay, so that gives you somewhat of an idea of how it affects that in that fashion. And that's probably not, that's not what we want. We probably want it more, yes, that's a little too big. So you can play around with these. So that would be more of a 1-to-1 texture. So probably what is more beneficial is actually to keep it this way, now I think of it. So let's go look at that in our camera view. So yeah, so you can get an idea of exactly how this actually works here. So this texture is probably turning out a little too big. Yeah, so what we will need to do, you can see all these anomalies that are in the texture, makes it look like it's got waves in it, which it actually really doesn't. It's kind of an optical conclusion there. But let me fix that so that it's not doing that. Dropped a few more frames there, just keep an eye on that. It's behaving so far, but primarily how this usually works, yeah, might have to do a 1-to-1. So this is a 1-to-1, so this would be a 1-to-1 texture. Now, the fact that it still has, yeah, that's actually pretty interesting. I'm not sure why it's doing that. It's actually showing like it does have bumps in it, which it shouldn't. I gotta figure that out. Interesting. Let me go check on my X sections here. Did it actually? Now it's got me curious now. Alright, so if I click on that, I still got those mode absolute. I'm gonna open up the height view just to see what's going on with that. Because I don't think, yeah, let me check out my height view here just really quick here. So I'm not 100% sure why it is showing. Yeah, it should be 0. So this is your height view. This is basically tells you what type of elevation changes you have in your X section. It's relatively at 0. So let me see here. Why is it not letting me zoom out? Hello? There we go. Pushing the wrong keys. There we go. Yeah, so this is completely flat. Alright, so this is what shows you. This right here, well, we'll get into this more as far as, this is kind of your cutaway view. So like if you were to apply elevation here, like if I was to apply some banking to this, I could lift this end up. Here we go back. There we go. Sometimes when you don't get these points on there, if you just move it forward or back, you know, it'll populate that. So sometimes when you're trying to select those ends to be able to adjust them in this view, if you just move it forward or backwards, yeah, so that's probably a fair mention on that for the height view, at least anyway. In fact, let me go ahead and clip that. That's actually some good info. Yeah, go ahead and clip that. So yeah, that's just a little bit of explanation as far as how this height view is. So yeah, you want to get to these, and what it'll show you, you zoom in on that, you can see the bank at left and the bank at right. So the bank at right, what that means, so this would be like the interior most X section, and by that I mean it would be this one here. So if I select this and go back into height views, okay, so that's that point. Okay, this point out here, I can go to the left. This will be the outermost X section. So that'll be out this. So that's this point here. So if you were to apply banking to this, and I won't necessarily do that. It'll show you how much banking, how many degrees are in that. And this is a pretty big section, but that's when I wanted to look and see why I was getting all this rippling in the texture itself. I shouldn't be, so not 100% sure, but the fact that I've got it set the way I do in the texture seg, the textile size. Let me go back to that F section. This is a 1-to-1, so that means the way it's presented in this texture here is a 1-to-1. So if I was to apply, for example, if I was to apply a 2 to this one, this would be 2 times the normal size, and that would work the same on the V. So we're going into this one, so you could do it this way. You can see, you can actually see it change better in this view. This is real time. So if I apply this, let's just put a 10 on it, so you can see how that changes. So that's 10 times as big as the original texture, the MIP file. This is 1 time. Same goes for this one. So if I would tip this out, yeah, so you can see how that striates. Probably don't necessarily want that. So this is a 1-to-1 right here. 1-to-1 to the texture that exists in the MIP file itself. Now, like I said, the fact that I'm getting these little ripples in here, I'm not 100% sure. Don't really know why it's doing that, but that gives you somewhat of an idea of how the texture gets applied. Now from here, what I can do is copy this. So like if you set your first, set this up here the way you want it, as far as like just viewing it how it appears in this segment, you can essentially apply that all the way through here. And I'm going to leave all this, because you can unlock this, you can change what this material actually affects as far as the racing surface, the apron, pit road, all that jazz. I'm going to leave that alone for now. We're just going to make this entirely racing surface. The point I was trying to make is, once you get your texture set up as far as what you want it to affect, what areas, and what texture it is, and your textile size and all that, you can actually use this copy properties, forward or back. So how the forward and back works. The forward and back works, you think in terms of the direction of the track. So the fact that this is a counterclockwise track, this segment that I'm in here, if I move it forward, see how it moves to the next section. That's just moving. I didn't copy anything over yet, but it moves. You're going in the same direction as the track that you've got laid out. Okay, so whoops. Give me a second here. So clicking on the wrong stuff here. Bear with me, folks. Okay, so yeah, the fact that I don't have anything in this section yet. So if I go back, that shows where my texture is. So if I wanted to copy these properties to the next segment, I do a copy forward. See, then it moves forward and applies the texture. Now, you don't want to get too carried away with that option. I've found myself, just out of personal experience, you can get a little carried away with that, because if you've got something applied the way you want it, and you go all the way around through it again, you're going to change your properties, as far as like, especially if you go applying additional F sections and or W sections, you want to be really careful how you use that copy forward and back. For this step right here, this is actually feasible to do it this way, because it saves time from having to, beat the fact that we've got all these F sections closed in. And this is not going to be final. I want to make that perfectly clear too. I'm just trying to get some texture in here just to have something visual to apply to the track for now. So this will probably eventually change, but just for now, see, now we can see a visual texture applied to the track. So yeah, don't consider that to be the final texture at all. So yeah, just showing off the function that you have available to you, as far as like when you do the copy forward, it's going to maintain everything that you got applied here, as far as your textile size, what areas it affects, and all that. when you use that. So I'm just going to go all the way around this like this. This makes it a little bit quicker. Do it this way. As long as you don't click off the X section and this is all completely closed in, and this is how we'll be able to tell that it's all completely closed in, because as we copy this forward, if you have any breaks in your F sections from this point, you'll be able to tell. So we're just going to go all the way around in the direction of our track. It's following that trajectory. So we'll just get right back to where the lead segment is. This is probably one of the quicker process that you have as far as with building a track, to be honest. Okay, so now we got that texture with those parameters applied all the way through this. Now, this is getting a little bit ahead, but I want to kind of show this. The fact that the properties that I applied as far as this area, as far as it being a racing surface with asphalt, you also have this option to look at surface types. So this is asphalt. Now, just to kind of give a little bit of clarity, this gray that you see here, that means that's asphalt. Okay. The different types of, and I can kind of show this a little bit too. If you were to apply this, I'm going to unlock this. So that's asphalt. So if I do concrete, and it won't show initially. Fair mention, it's not going to show initially. So once you go forward or back, then it'll show. See, that color will change. So now this area is defined as concrete. Now, these different textures actually have different properties as far as grip levels, say for example. It doesn't really change the attitude, I guess, as far as how the texture is applied. It's more of a grip thing, as far as how much slippage, if that's a word to use, for a better way to describe it. What that basically says is this level here, and there's a hierarchy for the amount of grip that exists in these different properties. And it'll be a concrete, paint, and asphalt. There's also dirt, sand, and what have you. They all have a different level of grip, and they have a hierarchy there. So it's debatable, and it's somewhat how would you say, as far as my rule of thumb, and I'll just use, as far as my philosophy to it is, if you're applying asphalt, an asphalt texture that looks like asphalt, then you apply asphalt. Okay. If you're applying concrete, to where it's, using the common building practices, I guess, as far as laying cement, then you apply concrete. It's kind of a one-to-one thing. The fact that plenty of track builds have used the different levels of grip, be it the concrete, paint, and the asphalt, I guess, to create grooves of racing. That's been an advent that has been created as, within the last 5 years or so, and it's depending on, for me, I'm kind of old school, but you have that option to be able to apply different areas of texture properties, as far as how it behaves, how much grip is actually in the surface that you're trying to apply. One thing to definitely mention is, just because you apply asphalt texture and it has the look of asphalt doesn't mean it's gonna actually race like asphalt. Unless you don't apply it properly in this F section property, you're not going to get that feeling, of asphalt or concrete or whatever it is. So it's like, if, say for example, you want to apply water as a texture, it's not going to behave like water, just because, even though you do have an option in here, I believe there is an option in here for water, which there is. To be honest, I have never used it, but main point I'm trying to say is, like, just because you apply an asphalt texture visually, it does look like asphalt, it doesn't mean automatically that's the way it's going to respond. And I know that's kind of been some confusion amongst people sometimes. It's like, I put a asphalt texture in there and it still feels like concrete. Well, you didn't change the actual property. So just something to consider, and you can change this, like you can change it to dirt, which will actually have, it'll create a cloud when you apply this one. So again, you'd have to go forward or back, and it changes the color. So that's the color for dirt. Okay, if I move it forward, and I always like to get into the habit of using the forward and back rather than clicking into the workspace itself, because by doing that you run into when you get to the point where you have multiple F sections and what have you within your track segments, by clicking on to trying to click on the different sections that are in your track segment, and it becomes very difficult. So like if you're trying to apply textures like in linearity, I'll just use it that way, you want to get into the habit of selecting your F section and using the forward and back, and as opposed to just trying to click on, because it becomes very troublesome, to say the least, as far as to be able to try and click even if you zoom in. I mean, it's just it becomes very not so easy, for lack of a better way to describe it. So I always try to make it a point to always use the, once you got the, and you can look into your properties to make sure you have it selected, because once you get W sections and a multitude of F sections, I guess, to define your texture assignments to a given track segment, you're going to find it very difficult, I guess, to be able to select them. So once you get it selected, you can, and even once you get something selected, you can use the left. So like that'll move it inwards and move it back right. See, then it'll go back. So get into the habit, I guess, of using that. See, this one has a W section here, which is undefined so far. So there's no additional. That's interesting. I wonder why it doesn't want to go further. See, this is probably something, a fair mention to this too. Once you get to the innermost deal here, it's not necessarily going to give you any information on this, because this one primarily is where this texture out here stops. Okay, so let me reiterate on that. So the fact that I've applied the texture actually to this outermost, and it goes from this direction to that direction, so it goes this way, right to left. That's how the text. So this one here, I can't apply anything to that because there's nothing for it to go to. Okay, so if I was to, for example, if I was to move this X section further inward, apply another F section, then I could. So the fact that this is where the texture stops, so it gets applied from this point and moves, and this is where it stops. If I explain that, hopefully I explained that correctly, and thoroughly enough. But that's how that works. So that's something to consider. So if you wanted to put a texture beyond this point, you'd have to put another F section in, and you would have to, in this case, I would have to move this X section, because I can't put anything in here beyond this X section, because that's the boundary. Okay, so, and that's not what I'm going to do here. I want to keep this relatively open. I'll probably end up creating a model to fill this dead space in. But yeah, so as far as applying your texture, that's how that works. That's your bounding, that's your boundaries, I guess, for your texture. It applies it basically, regardless of the way you look at it. As far as if it does it left to right or right to left, that's as far as it's going to go, as far as in between those two F sections. Now, until I put a new F section in here, that's how far that texture is going to stretch. And that's the same that goes for, so let me go back to this one. And it's, it's still pretty easy for me to select this section, because I don't have all that many in this head. But as you, like I said, as you apply more F sections and W sections and what have you, it's going to become increasingly more difficult, I guess, to be able to select those. So once you get one selected, you can look and see what's going on with it. That'll give you an idea of what you're dealing, what you have selected, and then just use your left and right to navigate through the track segments, as far as those different F sections and what have you. And yeah, hopefully I'm explaining that well enough. It'll make sense as I do this, and I'll probably mention it again as we go. But for now, what I was trying to show, at least in here, is between how that works, and now that I have asphalt applied to this, this gray that represents asphalt, and I showed the different, as far as dirt and concrete and what have you, those will change. So if you're seeing those different colors, you have a different property and a different texture property, I guess, assigned to that. So the other thing you can look at is, let's see, and in this case, it's going to show the same. Now I think of it here. So your extended surface types, you get the same light gray texture. That means this is all defined as racing surface right now. So until we get to the point where we actually define our pit road, and where the pit road actually is defined, you'll see those, those colors will change too. But you have the option, once again, in your extended views, your extended surface types, and I'm just realizing that's in the way, so let me move that. Give me a second here. I'm just realizing that eventless is in the way. Just a second here. Just move that out of the way. I apologize for that. That's failure on my part. Yeah, let me just move this down. Give me a second. Doing some on-the-fly adjustments here to... yeah, I'm going to move that down. Yeah, so I'm going to just move this down a little bit. I failed to realize, I get this thing was in the way. So let me just move this out of the way a tad. Yeah, that'll work. This is Stream Setup 101, folks. Right, that's this photo. Okay, so there we go. That should do it. Alright, so, as I was saying, these different views that you have here, so you got your extended view, that's still in the way. Gosh darn it. Alright, hold on. Not quite out of the way. Alrighty then, let me try that again. Properties for that. Oops. Adjust the transform on that. I apologize for that, folks. But this... Alright, so let's just put this somewhere in the middle on this side. How about that? That ought to do it. Okay, so, again, as I was saying. Yeah, so now that should bring it up there. So now you can see that. So the extended surface types, what that basically shows you is whether it's a racing surface, an apron, what have you. And I'll show these different aspects here. You can adjust all these in the F section properties as well. When you unlock all these materials, you have the option, and right now it's got the gray, same color as the asphalt when you go into that view. But if I wanted to make this an apron, and again, once you apply it initially, it's not going to show until you go forward or back. So then the color changes. So this color represents apron. Racer James, how we doing there, buddy? I see you finally made it in there. Good deal. Yeah, glad to have you. Yeah, I was just explaining, I guess, some of the how this works with applying the not only the texture properties as far as how the texture itself behaves, but also the assignments as far as the way the game recognizes if it's a racing surface or what have you. Good. Well, that's very, very good to hear. Yeah, so I'm just explaining, and I was just adjusting some things on the fly, actually, as well. As far as just stream elements that I have kind of blocking, I guess, some of the views. So, yeah, kind of a failure on my part, but no harm, no foul. So, yeah, this area would be defined as apron, as I was saying. So if I wanted to apply it as apron near pits, that color will change again, and you can just move forward or backwards, so that changes to that color. So those areas would be defined as apron near pits if you want to keep it that way. If you want to define your pit road, it turns into a dark blue. Okay, if you wanted it to be a pit stall, this is how you would get service on your vehicle. If you wanted that to be a pit stall, then it would be this light baby blue. Okay, and again, I'm still using my forward and back. I get into the habit of doing that. And I think that's about it. You can have it as undefined, which it'll turn it red, which By default, in most walls, you'll get that assignment to it there. Red, to me, that shows danger. Primarily don't want to keep areas undefined. You want to define them as something, be it apron near pits, or racing surface, or even pit road for that matter. So, yeah, areas of red, not a very good thing. Want to get those defined. And I think that should necessarily show in here as well. Yeah, so as far as the camera view, you get that view too. So if you want to get a better look as far as like once you've got all your stuff laid out, your track assets and stuff, you can see how that's affecting, how that would, having that defined as such would affect, in this camera view as well. Okay, so I'll switch that back, go back into the F sections, and go back. Man, I'm dropping quite a few frames. It's kind of nuts. Okay, hopefully it's not affecting the broadcast quality too much, and definitely let me know for sure if that's the case. Okay, so yeah, we don't want this as undefined. We're going to keep it for now as racing surface up until we get our additional F sections and whatever applied, once we define our pit road and such. And we have the option, we have the ability to be able to turn these off. So the fact that we can't see our background image, stream seems fine. Good, that's good. I know sometimes it'll tend to hiccup, in the video more than it does the audio. So yeah, that still always concerns me because I've watched some of the VODs there. Some of them are kind of crazy, chopped off and what have you. So anyways, yeah, until we get, yeah, what I was saying is about the turning off the texture. So like if you wanted to get an idea of where you wanted to define your pit road, for example, you can't necessarily see it with this being applied. So let me put this back on, display textures. So now we can see our texture. So if I wanted to see where I needed to actually define the pit road, for example, and we could probably go ahead and do this, I guess, at this point. That won't be too terrible. Yeah, we can turn draw world underneath off. So we just uncheck that, and what that does, it still shows the splines. Your textures are still there. We just got that turned off so you can actually see your background image. So from this point, you can more clearly define, you can add some additional F sections to define, I guess, where pit road is, and I think I will do that. So let's move to here. Yeah, I remember we went through this last week as far as, yeah, that should work. Yeah, being able to straighten this out here. So in this section here, I'm going to insert another F section, and it's not going to turn white as of yet up until I get, actually it should, now that I think of it. But we got those turned off, so yeah. I had to remind myself there for a second. So I'm going to mark this as Euclidean. So I want this to be straight. And what I've already considered that I would have to do for this situation, as far as the end of pit road to get this squared off, is I probably apply that as a track surface decal. And basically what that does is taking basically a MIP that has an asphalt texture or concrete texture on it, and apply that to the end to square that off, because otherwise that's just going to continue on and on, beyond, as you can see here. This will, the texture, if I was to apply it as concrete, it would go all the way through here. I don't want that. So that can be fixed though, like I said, through the using a track surface decal, and we'll get into that eventually, but for now we'll keep it as such. We've got those slight minor, see, most of these here are going to have to be marked as a Euclidean, which basically I explained that last stream. It's the Latin or Greek term for straight, something that is straight. So be it the fact that these are considered curved sections here, in order to get this to be straight, as far as when I apply the texture, it'll be, it'll have this boundary here now. Yeah, we want those to be straight. We don't want it to have a curve in it. So, and I'll show that here in a second here once I get these all applied. See how it's got the curve in there? We want to mark that as Euclidean. Shoot. Yeah, I was going to say, I hope it doesn't. Sometimes you might run into the way that presented, the way it did there. When you first put it on, you might run into the issue of it wanting to tie in, I guess, with existing F sections or X sections there. Sometimes if you're unable to move it, it tends to move everything else with it because it kind of snaps itself to it. Just delete it. Delete that section you did and go further out of the section. So like, for example, I don't know if I can get it to do it, but let's say I'm like this and I go to insert F section, and if it had this snapped here, and by doing so, let's see if I can get it to do this here. Yeah, so it'll give me it'll bark at me. So you'll either get that, or sometimes like if you go to snap it, see how it's already attached? I don't want to move that here. See, sometimes your best options, two options. You can either right click on the F section itself and untie it. And I've explained this before. This is your head and that's your tail. And that's based on the direction of the track. So like if you're considering the direction of the track being counterclockwise going in this direction, this would be your head and this would be your tail. Now the fact that the tail is already disconnected, it's grayed out. So kind of process of elimination here. But if you're only wanting to untie, I guess, one part of the F section, then you would have to, understand that that concept there. So I want to detach it at head, which it did. So you can do it that way. Or your other best option is, if you can't get it to do that, as far as being able to select it and untie it at the head or the tail, just delete it and move further out of your section, further out so that it puts it further out. So you have those two options. So depending on what works, if you're finding it difficult, I guess, to be able to get it separated, I guess, from something that it's snapped itself to, just delete it and move further out and right click and then add it again. See, now I want to still mark this as Euclidean. So I want that straight. And it's just a matter of getting those snapped together. Alright, and just as I've always said, sometimes you gotta zoom in. It helps whatever as far as getting that to snap better. Definitely do feel free to ask any questions, if you have any, as far as all this process. I know I'm trying to put it in as simple terms as possible, without being totally just blow your mind type of thing. I don't want your heads to explode. I want to. If you do necessarily have any questions, feel free to ask. My philosophy with it is if the only dumb questions are the ones not asked. So don't consider, I guess, anything that you might potentially want to ask is going to be a stupid question, because I don't take them that way. Yeah, so I'm just going to get these initially laid out here. Now, whether or not I want to go ahead and apply, because there'd be like a painted line here, so it would be like a double F section to define it. Whether or not I'll go that far, I'm not quite sure yet. We'll see what we got here, though, because we do want to get this at least laid out to the point where we can define our initial areas, as far as what is the actual racing surface, what's the apron, and so on. So that's what we eventually want to get to. And I'm trying to take this as very slow as possible. I mean, as far as, it's going to make a lot more sense as far as the method that the method and process that I'm following here, as far as like why you wouldn't want to put, for example, all your F's and W sections in right away when you're laying your initial segments out. That's just too much information to have, because you're going to have track segments that aren't going to need W sections, for example, at all. And when I think of that, is like this one over in this area, you won't need any W section here because that's an opening. Just things like that. So that's what I consider as far as But we're at the stage now where we can necessarily apply exactly what we're doing right here. So I want to, hopefully, I know I mentioned this earlier part of the stream, get into showing a little bit of the LiDAR for this track. We do have some point cloud information, albeit the LiDAR data based on this track, and I want to be able to show that just a little bit, and I'll probably do that towards the end of the stream. To be honest, the process as to how we use that information and apply it to our track that we're building here is still being, all those processes are still being, the kinks are being worked out. So I won't get too much into it, but just to give you an idea of what we're actually. Awesome Gamer, how we doing? How we doing this evening? Glad to have you. How are we doing? I hope you're having a fantastic weekend. I know it's getting pretty chilly. It's gotten pretty chilly up in my neck of the woods. And, it's typical for this time of year, but it's murder on the sinuses and such. I'm doing just fantabulous, like I said. How are you doing? Yeah, we're just playing in the sandbox a little bit as far as trying to apply, I guess, a scratch build, I guess, of the Charlotte Roval in this case. And I'm just showing off just what is involved with doing that. The fact that you have such a huge reconfiguration, I guess, of that track as far as to get it to work properly. See, we're going to run into the same issue here, be it that it's going to be an angle, as we will on the other end, as far as to have to apply this as a track surface decal to get that straightened out. Had the heat on last night in the 40s, woke up, went to work on the house, came home, and it was 75 in the house. Had to turn AC. Jesus. Gotta love it. Yeah, it's that time of year. Yeah, so well, especially with doing work on the house there, James, you're kind of, building up body heat and all that stuff like that. So, yeah, I can imagine. That's funny. So, yeah, like I was saying here, be it the fact that this is a angled section, track segment here, it's going to create, when I apply the texture here, it's going to be on an angle. So if I want to get this to straighten out here, I'll probably have to apply a track surface decal there. And that's not a huge problem. Be it the fact that this also is going to be a relatively flat area. It doesn't have any banking or anything like that. We can do that as opposed to creating a 3D model, I guess, to fix that. But we'll have to do the same thing down here. So I'll have the same problem. It's going to tend to want to extend off here, so we're going to need to define that. And that won't be too much of an issue, to be honest, because this is all considered pit road exit. So if I wanted to apply this as pit stall, I should be able to do that still, and still define this as apron near pits. So there's a good example. We're splitting, possibly, yes. So I think if I understand you right, James, as far as if you wanted to split this just to get this to straighten out, not a good idea. Yeah, try to stay away from that. I've seen plenty of track builds try to do that. So for example, between these two segments here, to split that up to try to get this straightened out, terrible idea. Terrible idea. Do you want to keep your splits, as far as the size of your track segments, to a minimum? Yeah, the fact that I've even got these segments here, these are pretty small. To get these openings, I guess, in the pit, well, that's probably about as far as you want to go, as far as the level of detail, as far as crunching down and splitting up your segments so much. I've seen so many track builds, like I said, as far as to try to get this segments here to straighten out, and just have several little slivers of track segments. That's just terrible. Shouldn't do that. And that's why you'll get a lot of problems, as far as being bumps in the track, to get it smoothed out, as well as, just frame rate issues, things like that. And I know I have explained this somewhat in layman's terms before, but what it basically boils down to is just like if you consider an old-fashioned film strip, the kinds that I have the 2 reels, and we used to watch the movies. Kind of having a flashback a little bit as far as watching the old school movies on the projection screen with the 2 reels. You have that film strip there. If you were to cut that film strip up and try to splice it back together, you're gonna get skipping in that film. It's never gonna run nice and smooth. And that's relatively the same type of thing you'll deal with when you're splitting a track up. So like from this point, if I was to try to make this even smaller to try to get this area to, it's not gonna bode well as far as I would expect there to be some frame rate issues and even bumps that I can't smooth out and such like that. So definitely want to keep your splitting and the size of your how many segments that you have to a minimum, bare minimum. I think I've said enough about that for now. All right, so moving forward, so I'll have to put a TSD here, I guess, to straighten that out. So that should be fine. I think what I will probably do is at least define this outer edge. Yeah, this outer edge of the pit road. So that'll be basically the pit stalls will be between these 2 F sections. Now my next ones here I'll do to define the outermost, and I'll mark this as Euclidean as well. Stretch that out. That should be pretty decent. Alright, so we're going to see how that's going to pan out here. I might end up having to do quite a few between the track models and track surface decals, I guess, to fill in a lot of this stuff. But to chop this up, I guess, to try to get this little island in here, not a good idea. No, there's other ways to work around that to get those types of things put in there. And that's what I intend to go over as far as showing off, I guess, these, this process as far as doing a track build, scratch build. Okay, so lock these together. Still dropping some frames there. Hopefully it's not. I keep seeing out of the corner of my eye it tends to turn red on me, which not good as far as like that. But it only does it for a split second, so. Alright, so yeah, we're just going to follow through on this. Now the fact that there is this inner oval, I guess you could say, in the infield here. I know what we have done in the past is just to apply this as a model, as far as a 3DO, even a TSD. I think it works better as a 3DO, to be honest. And you can do that by, I've shown that process too, as far as creating a DAE of the actual track mesh, and we're not even close to doing that yet. But yeah, create that once you got all your aspects of the actual track in there, and you can chunk out that area or whatever to create this as a 3DO, as opposed to actually chopping it all up, splitting the segments up there and actually putting it in there as F sections. That isn't as optimized. I'll be perfectly honest on that. We found it better. We have found it better through other builds that we've done to just create this either as a TSD, 2 halves, probably even 3 pieces, or just one 3DO model. So whether or not, what approach we take to that, that'll still yet to be seen. But yeah, there's better ways around it as far as being able to split the track up or whatever to get those types of aspects into the track. Alright, so I'll get these all straightened up later on here, because, well, like I said, what I'll probably end up having to do, be it the fact that there's a painted line here, is I'm going to have to put a double F in here in order to achieve that. So, yeah. I'll have some adjustment to be made. I'm just trying to get these initially laid out for now. Yeah. So I guess primarily, what I'm going by at this point is just that outermost edge of that painted line. You can see there, and realizing, I guess, this painted line that's on the pit road there, it's kind of like a black. Yeah, it's a black painted line, and it has white with black outlines, I guess, on it. Those there will probably get applied, as far as the vertical ones, I guess in this case, between the F section, those will probably get applied by TSDs. And if not by TSDs, probably by a model. I have successfully and pretty efficiently, I guess, I got that to work by using a DAE model, as I was saying before with doing this one here and actually applying the decals that way on a pit road. It works really well, I guess, with curved pits, be it tracks like Martinsville and Richmond, such like that. It's a time saver as far as being able to apply all these individual TSDs, check surface decals. Very tedious process. And we'll get to all that, like I said, we're not anywhere close to that, getting to that point yet, but we'll eventually get there. Okay, so let's finish up putting these F sections here to define our pit road. I know I go off on tangents, and I apologize for that, but there's just trying to get as much information out there as possible to kind of show what you should consider if you do intend to engage in doing these types of things yourself. Now, and I've mentioned this before too, so you can see how the trajectory, I don't know why they got this thicker. Oh, this is a wall. I just remembered that. They put a wall here so that when they're going through here, if they crash in this area, it doesn't. Yeah, so this is a wall. And I assume that's like a temporary tire barrier type of thing. So, man, it's still burping pretty good. Okay, just making sure I'm still coming through. So yeah, like I was saying, this is a wall here, and I think it's just based on tire barriers. So, yeah. I'm just going to follow this trajectory here, and whether or not I would do that as a W section or just a model thing, I want to have a collidable barrier there for sure. So that's something we'll have to think about, I guess, moving forward. So this should be another curved section, so that should be curved. I'll have to mark that as you clad in. Straighten it out. So yeah. Alright. Gonna zoom in on that a little bit better so we can get that snap there. There we go. So you get somewhat the idea. Now, excuse me, the fact that I cannot see, I have to kind of assume where that painted line would be and kind of use the edge of that wall there, to judge the thickness, the distance between the F section and that to, get that defined. And the more I think about it, I'll probably end up having to apply a W section there at least to get the collidable barrier. Whether or not I'll do the actual wall as geometry or a model, that's still yet to be determined. Because the fact that you do have the ability, and we've done this with the safer barrier, to be honest, you have the ability to be able to use both a W section without putting any textures on it, just to have those facades, that collidable property to a 3D model. Okay, so what that means is I could apply a W section here and don't put any textures on it, on any of the facades, and then actually model that as a 3DO, as a 3D model. And like I said, we've somewhat implemented that with the safer barrier to kind of take advantage of both having the collidable property as well as having a more accurate wall, I guess, as far as the safer goes. Alright, so I'm zoomed in here pretty good, so I just want to zoom out just a tad more to see where I'm at. So yep, these are snapping together pretty well. I haven't had too much of a problem today, which is nice. You're part of your discipline too. You got to learn to take breaks. That's for sure. It's very easy to get so involved, I guess, with working in the sandbox here that you forget to give yourself a break, as far as give your wrist a break and so on. Okay, so I think this should be good here. So what'll probably end up happening here again was I'll have to do probably a TSD or track surface decal or 3DO, I guess, to define this area, just based on the way this. I'm not going to chop this up to try and get this, you know, the way it needs to be. It's not the best approach. What I will need to do here is you consider this is not where this F section will stop, so I'll have to probably to define the apron and such. That'll continue up into here, and this will be apron near pits in between these F section here. This will be apron, and then this will be pit road, and then of course this will be pit stall in between these two. So just kind of, you know, eyeing over as far as what is going to be what. Seeing this one here, the way this F section is here, that'll come across. I can actually apply this as I look at this here. So I'm trying to think of how that's going to work now, because that pit road is going to kind of go into. Oh wait, this isn't used at all, right? Yes. No, that's turn 1. I just had to remind myself here again. So yeah, this is the turn 1. So the fact, yeah, I can already see this might be a problem. Let me check this here. Let me check this here. So yeah, going back to what I was showing earlier about being able to see your surface types. Oops, I got to turn the draw the world back on. So right now, yeah, so that's all white. That's what I was wondering. So yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and apply. And this is a pretty good indication here too, as far as how far that's gonna go. As far as your texture, so I got that difference between the white and my actual texture. What I'm considering right now is how far that pit road definition is actually going to bleed over into the actual racing surface. I don't want that, so I got to see how that can be remedied. I might have to yeah, so let me turn that back off for a second. And this is where you'll have to see. I don't know if that's, this is where I see it as a problem. Yeah, the fact that this is on an angle, and this is what I was talking about, I think, James, as far as why this particular type of layout wasn't going to be a problem. This is why. See, I would have to stretch this all the way out here. I have no way to stop this being a pit road, and that's going to bleed right over into the actual racing. Probably too much. Okay, this is turn 1 right here. I'm just thinking here. So if I put, let's see here. So if I can put an F section here. Alright, maybe this might not be a problem. Let's see. So if I can cut this off. Let's just see what we got. These are the types of things we want to be able to tackle. Let's see if I can lock this into here. So what this is going to do, potentially. Okay. I think we're far enough out of the way. So like, this is turn 1 right here. So if they're coming in here, this pit road assignment, we can actually still make this racing surface. So that should be good. In theory. You know, obviously there'll be some testing involved, but yeah, we'll have to see how that goes. So if I define this, let me go back into turn that back on. I'm going extended. So if I was to make this one, this will be pit stall. Let me check this here. One of my properties. I want to make this one pit stall. Yep, so that'll be the light blue. Alright, let's go back forward. I'm going to go to the right. Okay, this one would be racing surface. If I go right again. Alright, I want this one here though. So as long as I can make this one pit road, I should be okay. And it doesn't bleed into that turn 1 area. I don't have a texture yet, but that's okay. Okay, so would I need to make this one here still pit road? Let me see. I'm just checking things out. This is what we need to do. Figure out if this is going to work or not. So pit road. Yeah, see, that should probably work. So the fact that this is still turn 1, I'll turn them, turn that off again. So yeah, this is defined as pit road on this side. This is still racing surface. Okay. I might end up having to keep out, yeah, because the apron near pits will go this way. But I can still probably define this as pit road and stop it right there, hopefully. That should work. So that's why it's important, I guess, to see what you got going on here. So that this will be our pit road assignment here. It'll stop here so far. I'll probably, from this point, I'll probably add apron near pits. I'll probably add another F section in there. Let me turn that back on. So yeah, so I'll probably put another F section in here, as well as going up this way, so I can split up between the racing surface and the apron near pits on this side. This is the score tower, by the way. So that's probably fair mention too. So yeah, I would have to make this area be apron near pits, and this would have to be racing surface on this side. So I could apply F section all the way through on this side of that segment to define that. And I think I'll go ahead and do that right away. How about that? So we'll go insert F section here. And a lot of these don't have textures on it yet, but that's okay. We'll get that. We'll eventually get that on there. Alright, so this should be all locked together. So see, now that's all going to move as a unit. So, yep. So we'll go ahead and apply F section. Now, the fact that they have this wall going through here, this isn't based on the actual layout. You know, the time of this set image, this wall isn't obviously here, you know, as far as for the actual roval. So, yeah, I have to keep that in consideration. Yeah, so we're just going to go ahead and apply our F section here so we can define that. And these are the types of things, like I said, that we need to determine. So I think we're still in the okay there, James, as far as being able to use this trajectory of the, because what we had considered in the first, especially the last episode, episode 2, there was whether or not to run the center line this way or through the pit road. So so far it seems like that's still working out okay so far. And you know, by being able to apply our texture segments, you know, the F sections as we are, this is how we are able to determine whether or not that is going to work, and to make the adjustments appropriately as far as what how to progress from there. Alright, so we're just going to define this as yeah, I'm going to separate this up from our, this is the apron near pits, this is the pit exit here. So, just to clarify, I think I'll put that in as a Euclidean. That one I'll keep it curved. Just looking at the, comparing the trajectory, I guess, between the wall and the actual F section here. This is actually pretty decent here. It's got a little bit of a hump in there, but that's not too shabby. Probably suck this in a little bit. Okay. And whether or not we'll need to apply, whoops, an X section in here, I guess, to change that. I don't think there's any banking through here. I think it's relatively flat. I do know I want to consider putting in X sections for the curbing, because those are raised areas. So definitely will need to do something with that. Okay, so for now, that should be pretty good there. That should get us defined as far as apron near pits. Now we're getting back into racing surface beyond that. So, okay, so we should be good there. Now I need to do this inside. Yeah, we got to do it along here. Yeah, to find that area. So let's do that. Okay, we got this one here. Alright, insert an F section here. Don't know how that's gonna work. This one we got going here. We got that stretch there. Yeah, we want to keep this like that because we want this pit stall to work. So if I was to move this to attach to this one here, it's going to cut into this pit stall and it's not going to work properly. As far as if you were to use that as a pit stall, it wouldn't work. So the way this is defined, we want that property for it being a serviceable pit stall. If I was to cut this in here, that would, yeah, you'd run into the problem of probably not getting pit service. So the way this is defined right now, if I go into surface types, actually, hold on, I gotta turn that back on. Extended. See, that's a pit stall, this light blue area. So if I was to cut that in here, it's, yeah, if I didn't have this stretched all the way out straight, it's going to cut into that, and we don't want that. So I think that should work okay. If I was to make this apron near pits, yeah, that'll go to this one here. Let me just see how that's going to look. And it's not so much looks, but it's going to be function. We want it to actually work. So this is going to be apron near pits. And be it the fact that I don't have any, it's all by itself. I'll just have to write out here. So that's where apron near pits will be defined. That should be okay. Let me turn that back off. Yeah, so it's on this side here. That's beyond, you know, so the pit stall is still defined. This is where we have a pit stall kind of stretches out this way. It's still well enough out of the way of the racing surface. So I think that should be fine. And we'll have to test it, of course, to make absolutely sure, but for the most part that should work just fine. Let's turn that back on for a second. Yeah, so we can put our additional F sections here so we can define our pit exit here, you know, kind of merge it into this up here. Yeah, so I'll go ahead and turn that back off so we can see where we're at. Yeah, so zoom in on that. So we'll just continue putting F sections in this area. And like I said, what that's going to do is it's going to define both our pit exit as, you know, in between this little island here, between where the score tower is and the racing surface. We want to be able to distinguish those separately so that they're independent. They behave independently. Okay. So we'll just, yep, insert our F sections here. Alright, so, ooh, man, I keep seeing that turn red in the streaming software there, so hopefully that's still coming across okay. I know it's, like I said, it's usually primarily the, yeah, mostly affects the video more than it does the audio, so kind of worries me sometimes. Right, so yeah, and I think I had mentioned this before, between especially this area where I've got the two different directions, this one's going this way and this is where they're coming back out, whether or not I'll have to create a 3D model for this or if I'll be able to put a W section in there is still yet to be determined. Yep, for the most part, prior to me doing anything, there's definitely going to be a hole in this region. You'll be able to see that. It'll be pretty defined. So, alright, let's continue putting our F sections here. What I'm primarily considering right for now, at least anyway, is just to merge it with that F section that's in the racing groove. Okay. Yep, so we're just kind of straddling where this wall is here. You know, and I've mentioned before, as far as being able to, you know, get this curvature, I guess that's in here, and it's, you know, to split the track up, I guess, to try and mimic all that, it's not necessary. It's just not necessary. So, yeah, I think what I can do is kind of merge these two together, like so. Yeah. I think that should be fine. And you can keep F sections, it's probably fair to mention, you can keep F sections kind of, you don't have to have it fully enclosed. It's better to, but it's not 100% necessary. So the fact that, you know, this will kind of continue, you know, depending on what I put here, what it'll probably more or less come down to is how that texture will show when I put a texture in here. You know, between the pit exit and that, we want that to match. We don't want that seam to show. So that's something to consider as well. Alright, so turn this back on, and we're going to go back down here, and we'll apply this as apron near pits. And ultimately the same goes like I was showing earlier. In fact, I'll show that again. If I was to select this one's already set the way I want it. And by the way I want it, I don't have the texture applied, but it already has apron near pits with an asphalt property. So if you've got everything set the way you want it, which I don't have a texture to it yet, which I can do, let's go ahead and do that for now. I'll just apply this one. And it won't show because I got it in this mode, but I'll put the 1-to-1 on here, get it all set up. And I'm only going by what I've already applied to the other texture, you know, as far as the other area I've already got defined. But I just to show again, as far as like, okay, I have this property applied to this with the asphalt, got my texture size is all set and what have you. You can use that copy forward. Yeah, so let me show that again really quick. It's a really nice feature that the application does have. So once you've got everything set the way you want it, and you want to do that across several segments, you can just do the copy forward, and that'll apply it the same properties all the way through. Okay, and then you can make adjustments, of course, after doing so. But see, now I can go back to display textures. So as you can see where I still don't have textures and where I actually do have textures. But that'll be applied all the way through, much the same fashion. And I can look at that in my camera view. Go into the slew mode. So you can see where our pit road is right there. Here's where our pit exit is, as well as our racing surfaces there. And that's all that area. We haven't defined a texture yet. That's where the score tower is and that. Okay, so yeah, that's our pit exit. We got our stall over here. Is our straight for the pit road. So we're looking good so far. Looking very good, very nice. So yeah, just checking out the camera view there for a moment. Now, for the pit stalls, and again, like I said, the way you apply your textures, they go from right to left. Okay. So in applying this texture, this is white and it'll show me. Alright, so this one already has a pit stall. And I'll get this one initially set and I'll copy that backwards from this point. So let me apply a concrete texture I should have in here. Alright, so On this one here, I'm going to do an override and put this to a 1-to-1. Yeah, just put this to a 1-to-1. Okay, now if we were to look at our texture, the actual MIP, see this is not looking like I want it to. So let me look at, open up this texture and see how we look at. That's our asphalt. Let's open up that concrete texture. This might have different properties to it. These are just some textures that I chose from the default. Yeah, see now this one has a different orientation. See, this has got a map of 1, so that actually maps slightly different. So to get this to show properly, more than likely because this is more of a vertical map, and by a vertical map it's going to be let's see if I can explain this. So a vertical map would mean it maps from the head of the segment upwards. Okay, so probably the only thing I would have to adjust in this case with that map, the type of mapping in that texture, is the V. So I can turn this one off, and I might even be able to go, that would be a 1-to-1. See, now the other thing you have to consider, be it the fact this segment is kind of skewed, it's not 100% straight, it's going to skew the texture as well. Okay, so if I wanted to adjust this, this might take some playing around with actually. Let me just play around with this. And what it's doing is it's trying to skew it from left to right. How do I want to explain that? So the texture is being applied from the head of this segment to this. So how this is oriented here, it's applying. Consider this is the head of the segment, and that's the tail in our case. So we're trying to get this skewed so that it's going to straighten these lines out, for example. Right now it's not presenting it as such. So whoops, back into our let me go ahead and close this out now I think of it. I just was showing that off earlier. Yeah, we don't need that anymore. Okay, close that out. System's kind of struggling there just a tad. Alright, so what we're in the need to do here is to determine what is going to be our best texture size for this. Primarily you want to go 1-to-1, but let's see. I usually always have problems with this too. So like the skew on the U, I have to kind of remind myself sometimes. You'll have to play with these. Yeah, see that's how that's straightening. You can see how that's straightening that way. Just applying values to those skew. Alright. What I don't like, alright, let me see. Alright, so probably need both the U and the V in this case. Let's see. I don't think I would have to go higher than a 1, I don't think. No, definitely don't want to do that. Okay. I was just trying to think in terms of, yeah, so I can see this seam there. I'm just trying to figure out, that should be, based on the parameters of this thing, the map of 1, it's just distorting it. And a lot of it has to do with, I might put it on an actual straight. Yeah, let's pick more of a straight section here so I can give you more of an idea. So let's go to this one here. Yeah, that'll probably be better. So let's go to this one here. Select that one. I'm going to this just to give you a better idea, because the fact that we've got a segment there that's curved and it's got a lot of angularity to it, you're going to have to play around with those skews to get it to straighten out. And that's what I was dealing with there. So yeah, I want this as pit road. Actually, that's pit stall. Yeah. Now when we want to do concrete. Oh, you can get that. Yeah, so actually the other thing too is I want this to be concrete because it's actual concrete texture. 1-to-1 representation there, so we want to override. Okay, so this is at a 1016. So I might have to go bigger than I thought maybe. Let me try this at a 1 just to see. Okay. Now, just to give you an idea, so that's a 1-to-1. That texture is a 1-to-1. So if I do this, I just want to kind of show you so you can see how that texture is kind of skewing there. So if I was to skew this over this way, so you can see how that moves within those two F-section constraints. So in this case, I'd probably have to do a minus to get it to that side. Alright, so I would do... I think I can use this one. Yeah, okay. Yeah, so now it's moving it that way, so I'd have to probably go... I might have to play with it a little bit, so let's do 5. Oh, so that's not going to do what I thought it was going to do. Okay. Making a liar out of me. So, yeah. Primarily what you'd want to do, though, I guess is what I was trying to show, is start off at a 1-to-1 on both your U and the V, and then kind of go from there. It's almost looking like... might have to just keep it on the V, which is what I was initially thinking. This type of racetrack was not what this tool was designed for. You can plainly see. Oh, as far as the applying the textures, you mean? Yeah, so the fact I'm just going back and forth between, that's a 1-to-1 right there. Which one looks... I'm almost thinking just probably using the V, maybe. Let's see. So if I do 5, yeah, 5. Nope. Okay, so one of this have to be a minus. Ay, carambos, that doesn't look good. That's distorting that, so that's no good. Just in those complicated areas. Yes. Yeah, that's true. Alright, let me put this at a 5. I didn't think I would have to do that, but I guess maybe. Because it was at a 10. Okay, so maybe I might have to go bigger on this one. I was hoping I don't have to do that. Alright, so if I put this at... Nope, that's too big. Alright, so you can see the line here. This is that seam. That's present right here. Then what I don't care for is how it's... Because like I was saying before, when you apply this in here as such, what that's basically doing is it's magnifying that much more. So when you put it to a 1-to-1, it's going to be, you know, a 1 is representative of, you know, actually the actual texture that you see right here. So the fact that I've had to put a 10 on it to even get it to show, yeah. Seeing if I go into the camera view, that's not presenting itself, yeah, the way I would like it, but okay, let's see here. Yeah, so there's the seam, but if anything, I want to be able to show, let's see if I put it at a 2, what does that do? Alright, that's probably closer. Yeah, okay, now I can see it. Yeah, so sometimes you have to look in your camera view here so you can see the line there. So that's at a 2. Let me put it back to a 1. I think when I had it at a 1... Whoops, that's my height view. I don't need this one for now. I was only looking to see that it was perfectly flat. Alright, so go to camera view. Yeah, that's at a 2. Which is basically twice the size of the normal texture. So if I put this back to a 1, okay, there we go. Yeah, so I guess maybe I was just looking at it wrong. Alright, so let me look at this again. Yeah, so we do have, yeah, that's a 1-to-1 right there. The only thing it is doing that I notice is these laterals, these seams here, they go left to right. And again, those are in texture like this. I guess those are proportionate, now I think of it. Yeah, as far as how close these seams are together. Yeah. So yeah, I was not wrong, I guess, as far as I had to... I was kind of questioning myself there, I guess, a little bit. So yeah, that is a 1-to-1 right there. And that's, again, like I said, on the V, be it the fact that it has the map of a 1, that's a vertical map. And, you know, that's just through... the 0 is a left to right. As far as a mapping, it goes from left to right. And that was the previous asphalt texture. This one has a map that's top to bottom, or vertical, I think. So like this, it would map it this way instead of this way, as far as when you apply it to the F section in the sandbox. So yeah, that's what I was trying to show. So yeah, I was still correct. As far as the map of 1 means, it maps it this way instead of left to right, as the asphalt does. So this asphalt has a 0. When you apply the texture as a 0, it maps from left to right, so in this direction. Yeah, because like I said, I had to correct myself there a little bit, as far as, you know, I was second guessing myself, I guess I should say. So yeah, that should be good. That's a 1-to-1 texture applied to that area. And the fact that you do have the ability from this point, I can show this. If I wanted to move these seams, you know, like say for example on where this seam is right here, if I wanted to move that closer to this here, just as an example, I should be able to change this skew like such. So like you can move that moves it up that much. So like a 1 moves it that much. And you can go even half increments too. So like if I wanted to go half, so that's actually moving it down actually. So if you wanted to move it this way, yeah. Alright, hold on a second here. So if I do a 3, that's actually moving it this way vertically. So it's moving it towards this white. So if I wanted to go the other way, I would have to do a minus. And I know that's quite a bit. So let me do the half increment. So if I do 0.50, so you can see how it moved it this way towards the white. Yeah. As opposed to doing a minus 0.50, it's going to move it this way. Okay, just to give you an idea. I don't think we really need to do that right now, but you can see how that works. Okay, but it is a vertical map. You know, that's kind of what I was trying to really show there, with that map of 1 there, at least. Okay. Sandbox is made for making ovals quick and easy. Yeah, that's probably true. I don't know about very accurate as far as, you know, applying the texture, but for sure. Alright, so getting this applied, I want to go back to what I was trying to show with now that I have this determined as far as what I want it as a concrete pit stall. Got my texture set size, as well as my texture. I'm going to copy that forward. Alright, so if I was to copy this forward, you know, these copy properties, copy that forward, and it'll ask you, you know, it's not the same, do you want to do that? Yes. Move it forward. Whoops, I just moved it forward, so go back. Yeah, so that's the difference between just moving forward, I guess, on the, you know, to the next segment, or copying the properties forward. So you go like this. It'll ask you want to say yes. This one we've already got that applied, but I'll go ahead because I want to to maintain at least the initial properties there. Yep. There we go. So let's see how that looks on that end now. I'll probably have to skew it, but we can find out here. Yeah, so it's going to be a little bit stretched out for sure, but I think, yeah, that's stretching it out pretty bad. Where does that start? Trying to see here. Yeah, this is one problem you'll definitely run into as far as trying to get your textures to line up, at least anyway, because the fact that we go from we go from a straight into a curved sections here, it's going to change how that texture is actually applied to it. So yeah, I don't know if that's gonna, I'm not gonna worry about it too much right now. We'll have to play with that, but that's something that's gonna have to be fixed so that the texture gets applied so it's not all stretched out. So as you can see here, it looks like doo-doo. So yeah, down here it's fine. So like when once you get into these curved sections here, see how it's kind of like pinching all the, yeah. But for now, we'll kind of keep it that way. See, the fact that we only have the option here to skew it, as I was showing earlier, as far as up and down that segment, if I don't apply it this way, as far as putting it at least a 1 on that one there, I have no way to adjust. So let me see here. Let me see if I can get some initial adjustments in here just to see if that's going to work. Yeah, so that still looks like doo-doo. So I'll have to probably play with that to see what's going to work, because we'll definitely have to skew it so that we can straighten the lines out, because that is an angled section there. So that's part of the lot of the big issue that you'll deal with as far as how to apply your textures in these different track segments like that. I'm not going to worry about it too much. I don't want to bellyache over it too much right now, but I'll probably have to end up playing around with that to see what's going to be the proper skew that you'll have to put on there so that it all matches all the way down the way. But you get the rough idea as far as how that works anyway. So what I'll do for now is at least just put, I'll leave that just like it is right there. Okay, so from this point, I want to copy those properties backwards so we can get all that defined as pit stall. In fact, we can go back into that really quick. So that's all pit stall. Eventually we'll get this all as pit road. So you can see how this is shaping so far. This is our pit exit. This is that island, which I'll probably create this as apron near pits. Either apron or apron near pits in this area. Because that's that dead space. This is our racing surface over here, so we'll keep that as such. So let's copy these properties backwards for that. Let's go back to visiting our textures. Alright, so I'm going to the sections here, and I'm going to copy these backwards. And it's going to tell me, it's going to give you a little prompt. Okay. Copy back, yes. Copy back, yes. Let's copy these all the way through. Oh, that thing keeps turning red. It's driving me nuts. I got next to 4,000 drop frames already throughout the duration of the stream. Kind of crazy. Hopefully that's not, hurting the quality of the broadcast too much. Whoops. Copy back, yes. Copy back, yes. It's very easy, I guess, to start clicking on stuff that you forget to. All I did was lock and unlock. That wasn't too much of a big issue, but gotta be careful what you click on sometimes. There's no undo in this thing, so got to pay attention to what you're doing. Okay, so now we got all that defined. That's our pit stalls. So if we go back into our extended surface types, you can see those are all clearly pit stalls now. By that, now what I want to do on this part, which I don't think I have a texture applied yet. Let's go back to splitter textures. Yeah, we don't have a texture to that yet, so we'll just put our asphalt texture to that as well. I gotta make sure there's that connected. Yeah, okay. So in this section, we're just gonna do the asphalt. And these can all be changed later on too, so don't be concerned with that too much. Alright, so let's go to the right. So this one I'd have it at just 1 and 1. So I'm going to set this one much the same. So I want to do this one as pit road, which it already is, asphalt. And we're going to do this, set this one up as a 1 to 1. 1 on the U and 1 on the V. Just for now. Okay. And then what I want to do is copy that one backwards. Okay, so we should be good. Just follow that through, and that'll probably won't stay that way, but I just want to get something initially down there. Copy backwards, and by doing the copy backwards, it, you know, as far as the direction of the track is concerned, that's why I'm going backwards. So if I was go forward, that's the direction of the track, that's forward as opposed to backwards. So alright, yeah, I'll definitely change that texture, I guess, to this eventually in this area is going to be grass for the most part, which I'll probably define that F section as well. I think we're well enough to that point. Okay, so here we want to keep that as asphalt, so I can probably copy that forward. Yep, let's do that. So we want to copy that one forward. There we go. So now if we look back into our extended surface types, got our pit road that stops well enough short of where our racing surface is, as well as our pit stall, our apron rear pits. This right here, I'll probably just define it as apron, but I do need to apply a texture to that as well. Let's go back to display textures. So for now, I'm just going to put asphalt. I'll probably change it later on, but I want to define that as apron, and we'll just apply. I don't think I have. Yeah, I'll just do it as asphalt for now. Alright, so we're going to put that as a 1 to 1. So I'm just trying to show the process of what, once you get one initial one set, and you want to copy that property, I guess, through multiple segments, this is the process you would do. So set that up as apron, asphalt. In this case, the asphalt texture, 1 to 1. That's showing off good. So now I want to copy forward. So let's go all the way through. So that's a quick little, you know, kind of a little bit of a time saver as far as going through each one, clicking on it, and, you know, setting them all individually. You know, so there's some advantage, I guess, to doing it that way. So now if we go back into our extended surface types, so now we have a little bit of apron near pits, as well as our racing groove. Looks pretty good. You know, in theory there, that should work. That should work just fine. So if we go to our surface types, so we have our concrete here. All this is defined as asphalt between all these gray areas. And that should work just fine, like I said. So we can go even further into this. If I go, whoops, if I go into display textures, let's go ahead and define, and we'll go ahead and turn this off, our world underneath, so that we can see where our grass is. So we'll define where our grass is and get that one. Yeah, see, so what we'll have to consider, I can't put an F section here because that'll extend too much, I guess, into this area, so I'll probably have to just make that a little bit short as far as where that grass, if I apply F section here, it gets to define our grass area, so I'll probably keep that curved. That goes up in this direction. Actually, let's see what it looks like if I, yeah, so that's going to be too, so that'll probably be closer if I keep it curved, but I don't want that to go into that area. So this is somewhat an advantage. Now see, this is, again, something else that I've seen done with tracks or whatever, as far as to split that segment. For example, to get this trajectory, I guess, you know, a little bit more defined. In this case, it probably wouldn't be too, you know, at this stage of the game, it's not probably a bad thing to do. And I might necessarily consider that, because I don't want it out here, because I don't want any grass to be on the actual racing surface. That's what I consider as far as this area is concerned. So I want that to be well enough into that grass area, but I don't necessarily want, I mean, it's, you could use your better judgment as far as, like, is it really going to be an issue, I guess, if this is asphalt here? Probably not. I'm not going to make too much of a big deal, but at this stage of the game, as far as not having a whole lot applied to it, you can still, everything is still relatively flat and what have you. You still have the option to consider whether or not you should split this segment. Just as an example. I think for now I'm just going to leave it like that. I'm going to leave it just like this for now. As opposed to... So I might even go so far... No, because if I did that, I'd have to go all the way this way, and I don't want to do that, so... I might have to consider doing that. We'll see. Might have to actually consider that. Alright, so what I'm going to do here... Yep, make sure that's all locked. Just trying to define this area. Oh, skipped an area. Get this one first here. Yeah, so hopefully it's showing enough as far as the types of things that you may necessarily have to deal with, as far as what's first and foremost is just being able to define your areas more effectively. Making strides, getting something usable from light. Okay. I'm not sure if you got my I've been off yeah, messaging or whatever for a while, but I sent you my take on as far as creating those control points. Curious to see what you come up with. Alright, so I'm just going to define this area, at least this way for now. Whoops. Yeah, that's probably where our... Yeah, so that's why I don't like, yeah, as far as working with these small segments like that, it makes it a little bit tougher, I guess, to get them. Yeah, try to stay away from doing that as much as possible. I mean, the fact that we want to get that opening, I guess, in that pit wall, that was the only reason why we did it that way. So let's see how this turns out. Basically make a spline and then apply and probably upside down cone using the spacing tool. Foam along. Yeah, guess I'll have to see what you come up with there, James. I mean, yeah. See, this trajectory here actually isn't too bad so far, as far as how this curve is. This actually works out pretty decent here, so that kind of worked out to our advantage here so far. Yeah, so I'm just trying to define this front stretch oval, this grass area. Okay, so insert that section. Alright, so follow this trajectory. Yeah, this actually isn't too bad so far. Alright, so yeah, this actually looks like it'll turn out pretty decent actually. On this end, it's just that other end, it's actually a little bit more. Alright, so yeah, we could probably even go so far as to connect those two. And like I said, it's not 100% necessary to have to close this in. So if I, you can keep these open-ended like that. It's just how your texture is actually going to be, it's going to show. So whether, if you have a division, you can actually see a seam there, determines whether or not you should close that in or not. So, in effect, I'll probably end up putting in like a, either a track surface decal or a TSO, via a 3DO there to define, I guess, this area. Probably won't matter because I'll get covered. So that'll be determined later. Okay, so we got all this defined. So other than this little patch right here, that, like I said, I could maybe put another one in here. It probably won't make a difference. So other than trying to split it, that's all we're gonna. That's how the only way we're gonna be able to get. I don't think it's gonna be an issue, to be honest, because they're not gonna use this. It's not a racing area, because the turn one is right here. So the way I think of it is, even if this was still considered asphalt, I don't think it's going to be that much of an issue, as far as the way I think of it. So let me go back to draw the world underneath. So yeah, if I create this as grass here, let me look at that again. Yeah, so I can make this grass between these two F sections here, all the way through. And yeah, the fact this will be just more or less for looks, as far as to get this inner track, this little quarter mile, eighth of mile track or whatever it is, I guess, in there. So that'll be just a decal or a object 3DO, so that's not going to be actual erasable surface. So that shouldn't be an issue. So what I'll do is, let's go ahead and apply, turn that back on. We'll apply some grass. So in this section here, going back into our F section properties, we're going to make this grass, and we want to make that apron. Yes, we're going to make that grass apron, and look for grass texture. Okay, and for now we'll just leave it as such. I won't apply. I could probably go so far, I guess, as just to apply a 1 to it, and we'll turn this one off. Let's see how that looks. Let's see what we got here. So that's our pit road. You can still see where we got our hole. So there's our grass. Yep. So for now, just so we got something on there, so you can kind of get an idea of what we got going on here so far. This is all relatively still flat. So there's our grass area initially defined. I think we got a little sliver up in here. Yep, then we need to put an F section there. Might have to do that with a TSD. Possibly, because if I let me see how I got what I got here. This primarily this area, because this is such a tight radius. That's what's causing the issue. So let's see if I can apply another F section here. Let's just see. I don't think. Yeah, see, I can't go any further than that. So that's something we'll have to deal with as far as to close this area up here. Oh, that swoops in here like that. Here, let me turn this back off. Yeah. So even to include, I guess, where, yeah, you know, filling in this area here. I'm almost thinking I might have to split. As much as I don't want to do that, I mean, in order to fix that, and have that defined a little better. Yeah, because this little area here, as far as how that cuts in here for grass, I'll ponder that. I guess I suppose I might be able to fix that with either a TSD, track surface decal, or a 3DO. For now, I think I'm just going to leave it like that, but the more I think of it, I might have to split it. As much as I hate to have to do that, it's just that's something I'm considering. So let's go back into this properties here. So we got this all set up where we want it. Grass, apron, grass. So we're going to copy this back. Yep. Do it like that. Alright, so copy this all back. Yes. Copy back. Yes. So, yeah, let me see if I can, I know something that I have missed on here is to put some, musical selections on here. Let's see what we got here. Da-da-da. Let me go, just looking through my, selections here. Let me try this one for now. There we go. We arrived at essentially the same conclusion. My way of using splines is basically a more precise, automated way of doing what you did. Okay. I'll have to check and see what you did there. Alright. So yeah, I'm going to continue copying these back. Copy these properties back. Alright, so the only area that tends to be a little bit of an issue is this pet exit area. For the most part, which isn't 100% terrible. I can probably fix that. I can create a TSD or a track object based on that, if necessary. But at least we got this now defined as a grass area. Alright, so let's go to extended. So that's defined as apron. Yeah, so something else I consider too is the fact that this is still considered a racing surface. Might be a problem as far as coming out of pit road there maybe. So I might have to put at least another F section in here to create a apron here, because this is our racing surface going this way as far as down this other side of the score tower. So alright, so let's do that. Gonna insert an F section here. See, now the fact that I can only go that far may or may not be an issue. I'm not gonna apply a texture to it, but I at least want to get the apron property there. It's going to be really interesting, I guess, as we start testing this for sure. Alright, so let's at least apply the apron. There we go. Just want to make sure that's attached, which it is. Okay. Yeah, so I won't want to apply a texture to it as of yet. Let me see here. So the problem that's going to present itself is if I don't put a texture on there. Yeah, I might just still have to make it as grass. Because like I said, if I don't apply a texture there, this is not going to load right in the game. In fact, that'll show that as probably, you know, like black or what have you. So, yep, this is about the only area so far that I'm really having some difficulty with, is where that transition between the pit exit and the first turn, I guess, of the entire course. This end has turned out pretty good. I'm liking how this turned out so far. This is, you know, to be honest, this is kind of why I wanted to show. This is more of a challenge, I guess, as far as, yeah, we're going to definitely have to put something here, I guess, to square this end of pit road off, as well as do something here. So I think for now, I'm going to apply just the grass texture to it, just for the sake of, I think I put, and I can go back and just copy forward and do a yes, so that'll apply the same properties as I had, you know, in this segment here. So just showing that over again as far as the use of that. Works out pretty good. Yeah, so at least you saw what I was talking about in my video as far as, yeah, as far as using those control points. So yeah, I'd be curious to see what, yeah, you've kind of added to that. Alright, so yep, I am definitely liking how that looks so far. Other than that, that can be fixed. I'm not, you know, incredibly too concerned with that. I can probably put create an object for that and kind of clean that up a little bit. This end out turned out really good. I like how that turned out. Alright, so what I'm going to do, and I've gone quite a ways, much further beyond my discipline of about an hour into saving. So definitely want to make sure I save this now. I'm going to go ahead and save that. Yep, and definitely as a new PTF. Don't want to step on my original one. And just make sure, I'll verify that it did create it. Yep, we are good so far. So that one ends up being 70.3 kilobytes. This one's 26, so yeah, we got a lot more information applied to it. That's something to keep in consideration, the size of your PTF. So the fact that we've got a lot more information applied to the PTF in the way of F sections and such, it should definitely be bigger, and it is, than the previous one. So we're doing okay there. So what I am going to do is go ahead and close this out and totally refresh the program. Okay, and I'm going to go open it back up and go back into it. The fact that I went as long as I did, you know, over 2.5 hours into one session, you know, that's, yeah, you know, depending on what you're doing, it's going to make the difference as far as, you know, I went a little bit longer than I'd like to, let's put it that way. I'm not going to lie. I like to keep it within about an hour, hour and a half at the most, in between saves. Don't really want to go much further than that. That's just a good discipline to get yourself into as far as doing it that way. Alright, so now I'm going to go ahead and open that fresh new PTF that we saved. And there we go. Just like that. I'll give it a second though, I guess, to load. Realizing that need to get the, got a little bit of a memory dump there in the RAM, so I'm going to let that settle down a little bit. And by a memory dump, I mean it's still caching some stuff in there. So that's one thing with the sandbox utility that I've come to find too, and that's a fair mention. It doesn't use a ton of memory as far as your RAM is concerned, but as you get to moving around and using the different aspects to it, you'll see it fluctuate. You know, it'll use quite a bit, and it'll kind of chunk itself out, cache itself out. But what really resets that all is to do a PTF save, completely close the application, and reopen it. You know, so that's something to keep in mind. You know, so don't stay in Sandbox for too long without. We already heard that whole song. Hold on a second. I got some new stuff here I can probably try. Let's go to this. Yeah, we'll try this one here. Yeah, definitely let me know if that's a little too noisy, I guess, as far as in the audio. Just figured I'd put some music in there. Okay, so really starting to get somewhere with this now. You can see clearly defined, I guess, where our front stretch area is here. We got some texture applied, I guess, as far as our initial texture for the, and this is not final, that's for sure. I'll make that abundantly clear. We'll definitely have to continue to define different areas. We got our pit road defined pretty well. In fact, let me zoom this back out and just go this way. So we got our apron here, we got our pit road defined, our exit. We can work on this end here and do apron near pits here. As far as that transition off the banking into the pits. In fact, I can do that now. Let's do that now. Put this back on display textures. Yeah, so we'll even more define, I guess, this area. So the fact that I still have this open-ended here. Yeah, so I can attach this here. Alright, and then extend this out at least a little bit so we can do an apron near pits. See, I think this one here I actually did as pit road, which will probably be fine. Yeah, let me double check that. Yeah, so that's it. So we're going to do this as apron near pits in here, in that region. And really what that does, if it wasn't made clear, as far as defining that as apron near pits, it's more your, affects more your spotter cues. You're still going to have to define in your track INI as far as where the actual pit road proper starts. But what cues your spotter is defining that apron as opposed to apron near pits. So that's probably a fair mention. So on this part, I'm still going to apply the asphalt here, and I'll just copy that. same property. Whoops, I'll go ahead and close this for now. Alright, so yeah, going to the properties on this one here. I'm going to copy this one back. Yes. Oh, that's the grass, my bad. Wrong one. That's okay, we can still fix that. So if we go, let's steal from here. Should still work the same way. It's probably something I can show off as well. So depending on which one you have it selected on, so if I do copy back from here, see, now it'll do it that way. So depending on, see, the fact that I had the grass, it applied the grass the same way that I had it on that area that I'm copying from. So I did it from the asphalt, so it copies that one over. Even though that this is kind of open-ended here, and it's not physically connected to it, it just goes to the next nearest F section as far as going backwards. So, okay, so now we'll do copy this one back. There we go. And then the other thing I want to do is unlock and apply this as apron near pits. Apron near pits. Just those two segments. Okay, so now if I go back into my extended, now I got apron near pits there. And that's going to be your spotter cue as far as like when you cross that D-long, when you define it in your track INI, as far as when that spotter says, yeah. That's basically what that does. So you want to have, you know, a decent amount of apron near pits. I probably could get away with just doing it here and not necessarily going this far. We'll have that. We'll be able to adjust that accordingly as to whether or not if we need it this far or not. That can be tweaked down, I guess, as we test the track out. So, really curious to see how this is going to work, for sure. This should work pretty fine. That should be fine. Let's go back to surface types. Good there. So this is all grass, as opposed to asphalt or concrete on our pit stalls. So. Okay, now I think what I'm going to do at this point, so since I'm closing in, I guess, on 3 hours into the stream, I'm going to take a small little break on the track build itself and dive in a little bit to what I have been working on with some of the LiDAR as far as in Max, in 3D Max. So I'm going to go ahead and save this. Let's go back to save it as a new PTF. Display textures. Save this as a new PTF. There we go. And we'll just go into there to verify that it did save, which it did, and it's only slightly bigger than the previous PTF, so that's a good sign. Pretty good sign. Alright, so yeah, so what I'm going to do is, like I said, for now, I'm going to give this a little bit of a break. We got quite a bit done as far as just defining our different areas of the track itself. What I want to go over just a little bit, just to kind of give you an idea of what has been, and nothing's finalized for it. I want to make sure I make that abundantly clear, but a little bit of what is going on with the LiDAR, you know, as far as the point cloud information. So I'm going to go ahead and close this out. And just minimize this for now. And let me go ahead and bring up, get this to load here. Yeah, we've gone over a lot of information this evening for sure, as far as you know, just progressing on scratch build track for the NASCAR Racing 2003 simulation. So yeah, I really wanted to kind of show off just a little bit, at least anyway, as far as some of our findings with the use of point cloud data, you know, be it LiDAR, and how we could potentially use that information to apply height data, be it banking and such, to our track build. So, got 3D Max all loaded here. So what I'll do is open our scene that I have for that. Navigate to that. So we got our Charlotte items, 18, and I made a couple of different renditions here, and I think what I'll open first is this one. And what this will show is the combination of both the satellite image as well as the LiDAR applied to it and how it's scaled. So picture, if you will, I have, let's put it in this orientation here so you can see. So here's the front stretch here. Here's our pit road. Alright, so the fact that it's scaled 1-to-1, and some of the points that I used, and this is something else that I was going over with James there. This point right here, this little spike that exists in the LiDAR information, is the score tower. Okay, so I've used that to line that up over where the score tower is and I can render this, and it'll show up better. Let's see, that's the score tower right here. So that's kind of what I use to reference as far as to get the LiDAR scaled properly to the ground plane SAT image. So yeah, let me render this. Just to give you an idea, it'll clarify, I guess, clarify the background image there. So that point cloud data, I guess, as far as they created this little spike here, is the score tower. So that's what like I said, that's what I had used, I guess, to get that lined up. I've also used, that's not the only area that I use several different areas, to include even these garages that are in the infield, I guess, as a point of reference. I think even in this point here, it has, there's this point cloud here, I'm not really sure. This point here that I created here, I'm not really sure what that, I'm going to go ahead and render this just to kind of give you an idea of. I got these little control points, and this is something that we've considered. Let me render this real quick so that clarifies the SAT image a little better. So yeah, what I've basically done is use these control points, they're just little cones, and put that on top of the wall. So that would be the outermost region of the track as far as the elevation change, for that edge of the track, at least, anyway. And then to potentially use those control points, since there's really no way to use this LiDAR data in the sandbox itself, to be able to use all this information that exists. In fact, let me turn the ground plane off just to give you some idea here. So if I hide that, so this is just the LiDAR by itself, to include the control points. To use this information in the sandbox, to try to create a model of this and put it in a sandbox and use that as a mold, it's impossible. It's next to impossible. So the only option that we really have is to create what would be control points based on the SAT image and the LiDAR, primarily starting off with the SAT image, and that's at putting it at a 0, your XYZ at 0 is what I have initially considered. So if I bring the ground plane back, okay, so the ground plane is at 0, 0, well, actually I got it raised right now. Okay, so I might have kind of stepped on myself a little bit as far as it's because the LiDAR, I think, is at 0. Yeah, the LiDAR itself is at 0. So what I did in this case with the ground plane is I raised it up so that I could see the sat image as far as in comparison to the LiDAR. The fact that the LiDAR is set to 0, it's at 0 ground plane, so I had to raise the actual ground plane it up. So if I move this down, you can see how that lines up, especially considering like these garage areas. Yeah, see like these garage areas here, the buildings in the infield and such. So I'm actually going to change that. That's a cool song, but I'm gonna go to this one here. And change that up a little bit. I don't want to trying not to get the VOD to have any muted areas with using copyrighted stuff there. That being Coheed and Cambria, if you weren't versed in that. So yeah, like I was saying, yeah, what I had done with this particular scene is first to lower the ground plane on the Z, just to kind of match it up. So paying particular attention to where this point is for the score tower, that's how I was able to line that up. To include, I guess, where these garage buildings are. It's got all the height data for that. So you can kind of see that poking through all these different buildings here. That's how I was able to scale the LiDAR, I guess, in conjunction with, you know, because you would match, you know, to get the proper size, I guess, of your SAT image, your ground plane for your SAT image. We got video on that as far as how to create that. You want to take measurements in Google Earth and so on to get that size up. You would apply those same type of measurements in Max, get that set, and that gives you the, you know, the groundwork as far as to how to scale because the scale of your LiDAR information is going to be massive, you know, as far as, so you want to get it scaled down, uniform scale down to fit the actual SAT image. And that's what, you know, we've already gone through that process to do that, so that's why I had that. Right, and that's kind of what we were talking about there. I was just kind of somewhat glazing over as far as what has been discussed, I guess, even offline there, I guess, a little bit. But yeah, eventually we'll have a video that goes over this entire process as far as how to get the LiDAR lined up with your SAT image and so on. But this is to give you an idea of what I've done for this track in particular to potentially use it, you know, the LiDAR data as a way to apply alright, so I'm just checking some things out here to make sure. So I did initially try out a spline. I still have that in here, which may or may not still be an option. Yeah, so I got one right there. James, from what you were saying in there, I think you were pointing on the direction we might be able to still do that. So I'm curious to see. But what I did, just to kind of go over a little bit, just show. Let's see, go back to the ground plane. I want to bring that back up. That's what I wanted. So let me bring that ground plane back up. Yeah. So what I did was that's why I had this raised up. That's why I had this ground plane raised up, is to line these control points manually. These have a pivot on them. Let me zoom in on that just to kind of show you what I had done here with these control points. These control points have a pivot on the peak here. There's only one vertice that's on the tip, and that pivot's right on that. So what I did was one by one, I just kind of laid out these control points to line up with the SAT image. And I had these, I think I had this up a little bit higher. Let me bring this up a little bit more. Yeah, something like that. So what I did on these control points, let me zoom in on that, just to kind of get you to understand my process here. So I went a top-down view like this, okay, and then in my case I had to render it to kind of see where the cone was landing, because primarily what I did was to line it up where the wall is, like I was saying, and then did those one by one as far as what I got here. And this was in not really at that point, not paying attention as far as how high it is up in, from the ground plane or what have you. And then to once I have all those control points down, which I have, based on that, that same thing that I just showed, remove the ground plane, and then from that point, in fact, I got that in another scene there, so I'll load that one up just to show you. Okay, so I'm not going to save this one here. Let's just reset this. We'll do don't save. I'm going to keep that one the way it is. And I'll open my other scene here, to which I... Alright, let's get back to that. So now I got this scene that has the control points without the ground plane in it. And what I've done, and again, based on where that pivot is, you have all this LiDAR data with no ground plane to potentially take this control point and manually adjust these until they pierce the mesh. You can see the point going into the actual point cloud to get that height data. Now, with what James has probably found out or whatever, there's probably a better way to do that than the way I'm doing it, but this is initially what I came up with, and just manually adjusting these. And considering the fact that it's probably not 100% the best way, but you can see how it's piercing the point cloud as far as the LiDAR data to get that. And what you'll be able to do by then, I got a few of these already somewhat set. What you'll be able to do is use these control points as a 3DO and put that in the sandbox to determine where your heights need to be on your X sections. Right. Yeah, so like you were saying, James, as far as more or less the same concept, just a little more automated. So, but you kind of get the idea of what we have the option of doing to use this LiDAR data to somewhat of our advantage. This being the LiDAR data, this is all point cloud, I guess, for Charlotte. You can see even in the infield, to be honest, as far as the infield road course and such, to include the buildings, all the grandstands. A lot of that data we probably won't necessarily need. All we're concerned with is the banking data, really. That's primarily all we're really concerned about. So, but just to kind of show a little bit of the process of what is involved with trying to apply that appropriately. The fact that this LiDAR data still includes, I guess, this stand here, which has already been knocked down in reality, that's not 100% our concern. The fact that the integrity of the track, to even include, here's the tunnel that's in the entrance to turn 3, that's that kind of data, that's what we need. And whether or not I'll even apply that depression there, that's still to be determined yet. But we have that data to actually attempt to do that, I guess, if we wanted to. So there are some areas of the LiDAR that are necessary and some that are just don't need. So kind of pick and choose what we need from it and go from there. So just kind of wanted to show that off a little bit as far as what we're potentially working on to use point cloud or LiDAR data, I guess, to apply that to a track. So that's been my process there so far. So I got the two different 3D Max saves. And this is using, just for reference, this is Max 2014. To be honest, I've been seriously considering, I guess, getting a newer version to have the ability to do other things, you know, like with Farm Sim. Because with Farm Sim 19, for example, that I'm coming to find is they're tending to use Max 15 or 16 for theirs. And the fact that information from older versions into newer versions aren't necessarily compatible. They're not backwards compatible, I guess I should say. So that's just something I've been considering myself as far as moving forward. So good grief, I've dropped over 4,000 frames throughout the duration of the stream. That's in 3 hours time, that's over 1,000 drop frames. That's just nuts. Sorry about that. I just happened to notice that. It was kind of weird. Alright, so we're not going to save that. Let me get out of that. Trying to see where we're at right now. To be 100% honest, I'm kind of slightly tapped out, I guess, for wanting to do a little bit more. I think we got quite a bit done. As far as the progression of our track build, and to show a little bit off of what was going on with the LiDAR. Those are two of the areas, I guess. I don't think there's really anything else for now, at least anyway. Be it the fact that we've been doing this for the better part of 3 hours. I think this is a good place, I guess, to call it good and move on to next week. Definitely consider if this is interesting you, and you haven't done so as of yet. Make sure you hit that follow button to catch the next stream. Get for next week, and don't miss out on. Don't forget to miss out on the other streams that I have on both Wednesday evening with some Wreckfest supporting Woody Warrior Project, as well as Fridays. I do some farming on Farming Fridays with FS17 for now, up until FS19 comes out, I guess, next month. I'm looking forward to that. So if any of those types of events or broadcasts necessarily interest you, be sure, definitely make sure, I guess, to hit that follow button. You catch the stream when it goes live. Don't miss out, I guess, on checking out Twitter for when I go live, and any other social media outlets that I have there. In fact, I can put those out there. I think they have been populating themselves in the chat there, but I'll kind of show those off there. That wasn't the one I wanted. I wanted to do... Yeah, I don't know if it necessarily has shown off or not. Yeah. I changed my commands up a little bit here, so you have to excuse my ignorance a little bit. But those are all the commands that are available for all of those that are still in the chat here. You're definitely earning yourself shots of adrenaline. Those shots of adrenaline can be used for future giveaways, which I'm hoping to be able to do that eventually here. So yeah, so there's my Twitter. And personal Twitter for the channel. There you go, James. And checking out the new audio commands there. I put that one in there, I guess, for the Farming Fridays. So there's Twitter if you care to want to judge that. Also the Discord. Yeah, the Discord is in here itself, so definitely feel free to join either one of those, as well as the Spline Designs Facebook. That's our Facebook group page for Spline Design Studios. You can necessarily check that out too. We usually put some information in there. John Von Zombie, how are we doing, man? He just came in. Was just finishing the stream up, to be honest. We've been streaming here for a little over 3 hours, and to be honest, I'm a little tapped out there, so I'm gonna put a lot of information out there, I guess, as far as as far as using LiDAR data and such like that. Definitely feel free, if you missed some of the stream, if you want to catch what you did miss, check out the VOD once that archives, I guess, on the Twitch channel, and also on the YouTube channel once it does get up on that. In fact, I think I got that in there. I did not put that one in there. Okay, so that's something I might have to think. You're streaming for 3 more? I don't think so. I don't think so, buddy. Arctic Mule. I see you coming over here. I was just getting ready to finish the stream. And I apologize, I guess, for those coming in straggling. Do it? No, I can't do it, man. I need to take some grain. I need to get me some foods. If nothing else, I might consider, I guess, coming back later on. I definitely do need to get myself some foods. I'm very hungry. I've been streaming for 3 hours straight, over 3 hours straight. Yeah, for those like Arctic Mule and anyone else that's necessarily coming in here late in the stream, feel free to hit that follow button. And catch me next time I come on. And like I said, if anything else, if I don't consider coming on a little bit later this evening, I will be back next Saturday. Don't forget, on Wednesdays as well as Fridays, I have Wreckfest Wednesdays, supporting Wooded Warrior Project on Wednesdays, as well as Fridays I do a little bit of farming with FS17. So if any of that necessarily interests you, definitely feel free to hit that follow button. I'm only needing one more, to be honest. I'm not trying to to kind of be, just saying, as far as I need one more follower, I guess, to hit that follower goal, to have a potential giveaway for a Steam code, as well as my sub goal. Looking to hopefully get 2 more to have a giveaway, I guess, for Wreckfest. So once those 2 goals are met, that's necessarily what will happen. So that's something to consider. I guess, as far as moving forward. Like I said, if you are in the stream right now, you are earning yourself shots of adrenaline. So you can check your adrenaline, I guess, in that fashion. If you don't have enough right now, be sure to come over back next time to earn yourself some shots. And you can always try out the flip of the coin to earn yourself some more. Thank you there, John Vaughn, for sticking in the mood there. I haven't seen, nobody's used the rooster yet. What's up with that? So yeah, you can the flip of the coin will necessarily earn yourself some shots of adrenaline. That can work both ways, though. You gotta be careful with that. Be very careful with that. Yeah, just checking out the. Okay, so that finally did come up. I've been waiting for that to come on. The rooster shouldn't be. That actually should be working. I don't know why that's. That hasn't been used yet, so I'm not sure why it's doing that. Yeah, that shouldn't be. That's not on a cooldown, so that shouldn't be. I'm not sure why that's doing that. But anyway, I'm kind of dragging this out now. So, yeah, whether or not I do get back on later, after I have some grub, will still have to be determined. If you give me a chance to leave, I'll have a chance to eat and have that potential to do that. So, global CD on all sounds. Oh, I'm not sure what that means. I got it all. Yeah, as far as just looking at that there, I have it set up on. No, it's definitely set up. There's no cooldown on it, that's for sure. So I don't know why it's telling you cooldown. I don't know. I'll have to check that out to make sure. One must eat live. No, I don't do that. I do not do that. I don't have a camera anyway, but I'm not one of those, I guess, that likes to eat and work at the same time. I got to be able to enjoy my foods. So, kind of dragging this stuff out now. That's good for you. That totally works for you. There's a global. Okay, that's something I guess I'll check all that out on that. It should be set up the same way as the Moo, to be perfectly honest. But yeah. Well, anyway, John Von, it's always a pleasure, I guess, having you in the stream. I'll be perfectly honest. Total scream, but if I do necessarily get a chance, I guess I'm gonna call this quits. Okay, I appreciate everybody that showed up. I had a couple of raids come in, not necessarily any new follows or anything like that, but don't, yeah, definitely consider that. I guess like that, hit that follow button, get that next stream that gets to come on, and it could be on later on. You never know. Okay, man. I appreciate everybody stopping by, and thank you for watching.